Story 1. Parents and twin sister kicked me out at 16. I lived in a tent and struggled for years. Now I have a house and they showed up uninvited with my sister's family, demanding to move in. My sister asked my parents to throw me out of my house at 16, saying there's no space for me. I struggled for 12 years to have my own place, and now they are parading to let my sister move in with me because she's pregnant with her 4th child. I, 28M, have been suffering from my parents' toxicity ever since childhood. I have a twin sister who has been my pain in the butt. People say twins back up each other. In my case, my twin pulls me down to the bottom whenever she gets a chance. If bullying in my childhood was not enough, she reappeared in my life. This time she wants to move into my house with her family, despite being the one who threw me out of the house at 16. She has always been narcissistic. It is mostly because of the wrong parenting. My parents always wanted a daughter, but they got a son along with it. They even told this on my face that they would have terminated the pregnancy if it was just me. Just because there was a girl in there, they had to bring me into the world, so I owe my life to my sister. My sister would miss no opportunity to rub her entitlement on my face. You can very well imagine my childhood growing up in a household where I was unwanted. Everything was just about my sister. We were of the same age, yet I was not allowed to touch her toys. She gets a new set of clothes now and then, while I get only a pair of clothes at Christmas and one on our birthday. If we didn't share our birthday, they wouldn't even bother celebrating it. Oh, I just realized, if I didn't share my birthday with my sister, I wouldn't exist. I got the bare minimum thing, and the two was not out of love, but to save their faces from the judgmental eye of the relatives. The only good thing about my childhood was my grandfather. He was the only one who was able to see through their BS. Sadly, he passed away when I was 13. That was the worst day of my life. I had no one to have my back. We lived in a tiny house in the suburbs. My sister and I shared a room. It was more like I had a bed in a tiny closet beneath my bed in my sister's room. The entire room was filled with her clothes, toys, and posters. I was not even allowed to complain because, according to my parents, they were doing enough for me. My sister did like my presence in her room. I was allowed in the room only in the night to sleep. Even when I was sick, I would have to lie down on the couch and not in my room because she is a girl and she needs privacy. I desperately wanted to be 18 so that I could move out of the house. Looks like my family were far more desperate to get rid of me. When we were 16, my sister got knocked up by a 19-year-old loser. His parents had thrown him out of the house when he failed thrice in the 8th grade. My parents got them married, and my father got him a cleaner's job at his factory. My father is a mechanic and works at an automobile manufacturing company. My parents brought him home, so obviously, I had to move out of my room to make space for him. But our house had only 2 rooms and a tiny living space. I asked if I could sleep on the couch, but my father denied it, saying he sleeps on the couch when my mom's snoring becomes unbearable on winter nights. I was asked to find a place for myself. To add fuel to my situation, my loser Bill would say, "Dude, it's not tough to find a place for yourself. My parents threw me out when I was 15, and yet I was able to put my life together. Now I have a family, trust me, it's going to get better out there." I sighed. Yeah, if living off as a junkie means putting life together and knocking up a minor means family to you, then sure. Most of my relatives lived far off the place, and moreover, my parents threatened me not to show up at any of the relatives' places because that would mean exposing my parents' toxicity. I requested a few of my friends to lend me their couch to sleep, but there was no luck. Why on earth would their parents allow me in their house when my own parents kicked me out? But one of my classmates was living in a garage. He let me in for a few months until his parents saw me there and kicked me out. I slept on a bench on the sidewalk for a few days until I was rounded up by the cops and brought home. My parents made up the story that I had run away from home. They took me in that night. My father got me a makeshift tent from a junkyard and asked me to use the space in the backyard to set up my place. It was a reward for remaining silent in front of the cops and obeying their orders of not showing up at the relatives. Tent was still safer than sleeping in the open. Summer was still okay, but winter was terrible. One day it was so cold, I felt I was almost going to die of freezing. I knocked on my house, but no one responded. I desperately needed help. I knocked on my parents' bedroom window. My dad yelled from inside not to disturb him, else he'd come out and knocked me down. I felt so miserable, at one point I wanted to die. I cried for the whole night. The next day I went searching for a job that would lend me a space to sleep. One of the bakery shops needed a worker for his factory that was like 20 miles away, but he agreed to give me a place to sleep and even offered me food. Basically, they baked it in their house and needed a helping hand. They offered me to live in their backyard, but I would have to clean it up. I agreed. The place was pretty messed up with flour and sugar all over the place, not to mention the rodents surviving on them, but I was at the lowest point in my life. I readily took that job. I packed up my stuff and left. My sister was even happy and said, "Good that you're leaving. We don't have space for you here." No one even bothered to ask me where I was going. I cleaned up the place and made it habitable. Initially, it was difficult to get rid of the rodents when they came searching for food, but eventually, I felt cozy living there. I had to drop out of high school. There were a few more months left for the final year exams. My friends told me to continue living in my parents' backyard and complete high school, but I had given up. I worked hard in my job and lived off my salary. Soon enough, I realized I had to upskill myself to get a better job. I picked up few skills. My dad is a mechanic, so I grew up playing with his toolbox, worked for my parents, they didn't have to get me toys, plus I helped Dad in plumbing the house. I saved up and took up a course and a job at a car plant. I worked my ass off to climb up the ladder. Now I'm a supervisor. Recently, one of my old friends was selling off his house urgently. He has some divorce issues and he wanted an immediate buyer. I was reluctant to buy a 3-bedroom house, but he offered me a hefty discount on the market price and agreed to accept the down payment in parts. I grabbed it. 2 weeks back, I moved into my new house and today I found unexpected guests at my door. Yes, my parents, sister, and Bill. It was a surprise for me because I was NC with them all these years. Neither did they reach out to me. This house of mine is nearly 15 miles away from their place, so there's no way they would have bumped here casually. I'm not in touch with any of the relatives, neither in person nor on social media, but I'm guessing it's the neighbor. I'm still friends with one of my neighbors. He might have seen the pictures of my house on Facebook and told my parents about it. I still have no idea how they figured out the exact address. My dad knew where I worked, so maybe he got the address from there. As soon as I opened the door, they forced themselves inside my house. Mom and Dad congratulated me and said they were proud of me. I smiled and offered them a chair. I'm yet to get the furniture. I just have a bed, a few chairs, and a table. My parents sat down and started asking me about the deal. It was unbelievable for them that I was able to buy a house at 35 while they were still living on rent. My sister and her deadbeat husband were casually strolling through my house like they were planning to move in. I asked them what's the matter, why did they suddenly pop up in my life? They said nothing, just checking on you. Funny, huh? They checked up on me when I needed them the least. They randomly started giving me their life updates. Dad has developed hypertension. My sister has got 3 kids, 14, 9, and 4, and she is pregnant again. Well, good for her. I just sat there nodding and thinking whether to yell at them or politely ask them to leave. Mom asked me if I was getting married or have a girlfriend. I said it's none of your business. She was like, "Why are you so cranky? Is everything all right?" I said, "Everything was fine until they showed up." She laughed and said if settling into a new house was overwhelming for me, she could lend a hand. Just then my sister comes and says, "I've decided we're going to take that bedroom with an attached balcony and bathroom. I'm so excited to have my own bathroom. The kids can have the other room." I flipped out like, what the hell is happening here? My sister said, "You have a 3-bedroom house and you're a single man. You don't need so much space. You used to live in a tent, so getting a bedroom is quite an upgrade for you. This house is so big that I can accommodate all of us." My parents cut her off in between and asked her to attend to her youngest son who wailing for attention. I looked at my parents and asked them what the hell she just said. Dad told me that accommodating 7 heads in a small house was getting difficult. My sister's eldest son 14 was sleeping on the couch, while the middle one slept with my parents and the youngest one with my sister, and on top of that she is pregnant again. So they need a big house. I screamed and Mom said, And you know you own a big house now? Can't you take your sister with you? Before she completed her sentence, I yelled, hell no. I'm not going to take anyone inside my house. My sister screamed at me that I owed her this to bring me into this world. The same old thing. Mom and Dad would have never birthed you if I wasn't there. You owe me a place here. That house has become so crowded. I can't even breathe. I said, yes. Thanks to you and thanks for bringing me into this world. Now get out. Before anyone could say anything, I asked them to leave my house now. Dad tried to use his tough method, raised his voice and said it was my duty as a man of the house to take care of my sister. I yelled back at him that I held no obligations to take care of my sister, but as a parent they were obliged to take care of me but faltered. Now he was okay with his grandson sleeping on the couch, but when I asked for it, he refused it and threw me out of the house. I ranted about how I survived with rodents at my employer's garage and how I had been living in a dingy apartment for a decade, but none of them came to check on me. My mom started sobbing and tried to hug me. I blocked her and asked them to leave. Bill was like, man up, bro. I have also lived that life for so many years. I never complain. You have such a big house. You are single. What are you going to do with so much space? I gestured at him to shut up. My sister started cussing me for shouting at her husband. I said, well then get out if you don't want me to knock him down. I chased them out of my house without letting them speak a word. I'm fuming with anger. They were forever toxic and narcissistic and now they have turned greedy. But I'm not 16 years old anymore who would follow their orders like a puppet. If they pester me further, I won't hesitate to call the cops on them. Update 1. My sister and her junkie husband broke into my house. By the way, some of you asked in the comment if my sister offered to pay rent. The answer is a big no. She hasn't and she can't afford rent. She and her junkie are freeloaders and child milling machines. They have been piling upon my parents for 12 years and now they want to do it with me. Not that my parents are happy providing for her. I saw the frustrations in their eyes when they last visited me. However, instead of just throwing her out, they are offloading those lazy bumps to my shoulder. A week after the first encounter with them, my mom showed up at my house again. This time she didn't beat around the bush and told me I should put my guard down and let my sister move in with me. I said no way. She basically repeated the same stuff that it was difficult to accommodate so many people in a small house blah blah still no from me. Then she switched her gear and tried to threaten me. I should have taken the hint right away. She said, see honey, you live alone in this big house and you're gone for 12 hours a day. What if someone breaks into your house? If a family lives here, it would be so safe for you. Besides, you'll get a hand on cleaning the house and doing the dishes and the laundry. I said, for the last time no and go away. I don't want any of you at my house. Just a few days later, one of my neighbors told me he saw a pregnant woman with a man and a young boy loitering around on my premises. They were peeping in from the window, wandering around the backyard, and it felt like they were trying to sneak in. He is an old man. He sits by his front porch for the whole of the afternoon. When they noticed my neighbor was staring at them, they went away. He came to inform me as a goodwill gesture. I thanked him and gave him my number. I requested him to call me if he saw them ever again. My house was not guarded with cameras. I was intending to install it over the weekend. Who knew they would break in before that? Just 2 days later, I got a call from this elderly neighbor saying he suspected someone had broken into my house. I rushed home in a panic. He was right. My sister and Bill had broken into my house from the backside window. She was like, we didn't have any other options than this. You were being a jerk and not allowing us. Now we live here and you suck it up. I was in shock. I mean, how far she went to rub her entitlement onto my face. Bill came outside of the room in which they had made their bedroom. He was like, it was pretty smooth, huh? Without thinking twice, I charged at Bill. My sister came in between and I dragged her aside. I punched him in the face. Their 14-year-old son attacked me with a bottle and my head started bleeding. The blow was not severe and I was in my senses on the verge of blackout, but the rage kept me on. They all panicked seeing the blood. My sister called up my parents and told them what happened. Bill and his son started cleaning the mess. My neighbor called the cops. My sister and Bill started apologizing and begged me to spare their son from being arrested. I said, all of you would go down with him. The cops arrived and took my statement. My sister denied all the allegations of breaking in and assaulting me. She said she was visiting my house with her family. Her son played a prank on me and I accidentally slipped and hurt my head. I was mad at them and that's why I was falsely framing them. What a liar. Meanwhile, my parents arrived and they forced me to drop the charges against them. They all ganged up to prove me a liar and said I was using the cops to extract my grudge against my sister. Thank God my neighbor pitched in and gave his statement, and based on that the cops arrested them. They had to spend the night behind bars because my parents didn't have the money to bail them out. The next day they were presented for trial. I went to the hospital and got my wounds dressed. The doctor scanned it for internal injury. I had to take a couple of days off to nurse my wounds. I pressed the assault charges on them and also claimed compensation for my law, and the court agreed that they should bear it. Meanwhile, my parents tried all means to make me drop the charges, but I threatened to sue them for planning the assault on me. Her son is a minor, so he was dealt with according to the juvenile law. He got a week in a juvenile facility and his parents would have to pay for restitution, lost wage, and medical bills. Sister and Bill were fined heavily, but they pleaded to trade off a part of it with community service. It's been a week since then and it has been silent. I hope they have got their lesson and they should stay away from me. Update 2. Looks like my parents are not off my back yet. Yesterday they showed up at my house again. I slammed the door in their face. They stood outside for almost an hour requesting me to hear them out. Finally, I had to let them in. I wish I could just yell from the window and threaten them to knock them down like Dad did to me 12 years ago. Anyways, I asked them why they were again at my door. They both started sobbing and said they needed my help. I said if this has to do anything with my sister then count me out. They said it was about them. Dad goes, you see, I'm growing old and fragile. I cannot work as before. Our house hasn't been repaired in many years. Everything is falling apart. I cut him in between and said, come to the point. He and Mom wanted to move in with me. As a responsible son, I should take them in. I should have if they were a responsible parent, but they were not. I asked them what would happen to their house and if they're going to terminate the lease. They said they're going to give that house to my sister. I was like, oh cool. You guys have taken an alternate route to exploit me. Earlier you tried to dump sister on my back. That plan failed. Now you want to pile on for the one last time. My house is not up for grabs. Not for anyone. They said my sister was offering to pay me the rent for living in my house, which I can use to pay the mortgage. I said, I don't need her rent. She doesn't have to be bothered about my mortgage problem. She should instead look out for herself. Mom started crying that it was becoming very difficult for my sister to make ends meet. She doesn't even get proper sleep because her children sleep in the same room. I said it's not my problem if she is mindlessly expanding her family without financial planning. They were like, what could we say? You're not agreeing to anything. Neither do you want to take in your sister, nor you were agreeing for us. You should at least let us move in with you. The house is too big for a single man. I said, I don't plan to remain single forever. They tried to emotionally manipulate me that I should take care of my aging parents. I screamed, karma is real. Remember how you threw me out of the house? This is what you get back in return. I opened the door for them and they left with bitter faces. I don't care what they call me, but I'm not going to be a doormat and give in to their demands. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Walked away from my marriage after finding out she was 8 weeks pregnant by her affair partner. It had been over 3 years since I last spoke a word to my ex-wife. She reached out to me last week and asked to speak with me. We had a 1-hour phone call, and the conversation brought this sad, miserable relationship to its ultimate end. This is my story. I found this forum a few weeks ago and have been reading avidly. It has made me sad reading the outpourings of so many broken hearts. I am sorry to say it has also brought some comfort knowing I am not alone in my situation. I haven't posted before because what comfort or advice can I offer when my own marriage failed so badly? But after my conversation with my ex last week, I realized there are so many similarities in all our stories, a series of checkboxes, and almost all of them are checked off. That is what compelled me to share. We met in Tennessee. I was 22, she was 27. She was in her last year of nursing school, and I was in my last year of military service. We were both working, doing deliveries at a local pizza place for extra money. We hit it off and became friends, and after a very memorable party one night, became much more. She pursued me in TR truth, but I was attracted to her and more than happy to reciprocate. When my military time ended, I took her out to a nice dinner and proposed. I was so completely in love with her by that time. Our first year of marriage was great. I got along great with her family, and my family loved her. We did almost everything together. Then in year 2, things started to change. I was working full-time and going to school at night, working on a degree in civil engineering. I tried to make the time we had together special, romantic, but nothing changed the fact that there was a lot less of it. I could feel her pulling away and losing interest in me, so I dropped out of school. I made a judgment that my marriage was more important, and I told myself I could always go back later. Things didn't really improve. I had learned something about her. She is like a kid who tires of her toys quickly. She becomes bored with it and moves on to a new toy. I tried to keep her engaged and keep things interesting. Gifts, vacations, different kinds of romantic bonding. It was like bailing out a sinking ship. She offered little in the way of help or encouragement. It's exhausting to try and save a relationship when you are doing it alone. Then the cheating behavior began. This you guys all know well. She checked off the boxes. Protective of her phone and laptop, more frequent absences from the home, a complete withdrawal from intimacy. Affection from her went to zero, and even hugs and kisses from me were coldly received. I've read this so many times in other posts here. It's like cheaters don't want to cheat on their AP with their spouse. I knew what was going on, and I was highly motivated to catch her. We lived in an default state, but she covered her tracks well. Couldn't prove it. I think she noticed I was checking out of the marriage. All my attempts at initiating affection, or heck even talking to her for that matter, stopped after that. She tearfully confessed to an inappropriate relationship with a coworker. She swore it was never physical. She made a lot of promises and apologies. I had never heard the term trickle truth before coming here, but I suspect I was served up a hot bowl of it with a side of blame shifting. She wanted to work on us, she wanted counseling for us. I believed her, or at least I chose to believe her. My heart and my intellect were not on speaking terms. We went to MC for a few weeks. That seemed to make her uncomfortable because the counselor asked some very probing questions about the EA. I think she suspected, as I did, there was more to it. She discontinued after 4 sessions, but we seemed to be doing better. It was almost like I had my old wife back. I was very happy and decided to put all my unproven suspicions behind me. This lasted about 6 months until the cycle began to repeat itself once again. She checked all the boxes like before. I confronted her about it twice. She blew it off as stress on her part or immaturity, a favorite thing for her to throw in my face over the whole relationship because of our age gap on my part. Intimacy between us stopped as she lost all interest in it and in me. And then it happened. I came home and found her at home early. She was sitting on our bed crying. I sat with her and asked her, almost begged her, to please talk to me. She told me she was pregnant. For a fleeting moment, I was overjoyed. Then my brain began to engage. I suddenly remembered how long it had been since we had intimacy. I could see it in her face. I asked her how far along. 8 weeks. It had been over 4 months since we had last been intimate. I got up and left the room. She ran after me. Looking back and comparing the conversation that followed against the accounts of people's experiences on this very subforum, I am amazed how WS all say the same things. It was just that one time. It didn't mean anything. I only ever loved you. Of all the lies they tell, the last one stings the most. I told her I was leaving the house and would be back in 1 hour. Then I would listen to what she had to say. I was shaking furiously, angry, and in all honesty, it probably would not have ended well for either of us if I stayed. I drove to an empty parking lot and cried my heart out. I think I mean that literally because something inside me broke during that hour. My heart died. It turned to ice, and it still is to this day. When I went home, I was cold, emotionless. I didn't need to act like a gray stone. I had become one in truth. She insisted we could get past this. She saw how happy I was when she first told me before I realized. She commented on how we had wanted to start a family. She threw the baby's innocence in my face and how he or she would need a father. This went on for nearly 20 minutes as I sat and stared at her in complete and emotionless silence. Finally, she looked at me and asked me to please say something. I told her she is asking for reconciliation, but nearly every word she is telling me is a lie. I told her if she wants me to even think about it, she needed to start by telling me the truth. The version of the story I was told after that was it was the same AP all along, even from the prior year. It was always and only physical. She never loved him, she loved me. He is not interested in having any kind of relationship with her other than physical. He is pressuring her to terminate the pregnancy. She doesn't want to. She wanted a family and wanted it with me. I told her our marriage is over. It's been over for a year and a half, but I was just now finding out about it. I told her to pack whatever she needed for 3 days and to please leave the house. I told her I'd meet with her in 3 days to discuss what came next. She refused to leave. She kept trying to talk to me. Ordinarily, her tears would have broken my resolve, but I looked at her that night and felt nothing. The part of me that loves had died. I went into the guest bedroom and locked the door. Then the next day, I spoke to several lawyers and hired one of them. The paternity of the child was more than enough proof for an at-fault divorce. I had no desire to wait that long, and we discussed uncontested in mediation. When I got home, she actually tried to initiate with me. I was shocked and disgusted. I told her that would never happen again. We agreed on an outline for divorce. The biggest asset was our house. The majority of our debt was her student loan. I gave up my ownership interest in the home so she could sell it. She was going to keep the baby, and I wanted her to have that money. I wanted nothing but to walk away free. In the end, I kept nothing other than my Jeep, my military sea bag full of clothes, and a few tools, firearms, and military mementos, mostly things that were mine before we married. Everything in that house, everything she had touched, was just tainted to me. I wanted nothing from this marriage but to bury it in the past. The divorce finalized 13 months later. I saw her twice during the mediation. We barely spoke. She was very pregnant then. I thought that would be hard to see, but I felt nothing for her. No love, no hate, nothing. She was a stranger to me. I moved to Florida and took a job as an underpaid but also underworked civil servant. I have a very simple life now. I bought and renovated a small house on the Gulf Coast. I bought a boat and go fishing almost every weekend. I have very few friendships and have dated very little. I have trust issues now. I really don't enjoy the company of other people. I find myself suspicious of the attentions of women, especially ones I'm attracted to. I'm 27 years old now. I'm very physically fit and some girls find me attractive, but the idea of an intimate relationship with someone, trusting them to that level, I don't think I can do it, not for a long time anyway. I am the opposite of the man I used to be in almost every way. All my love now is reserved for a happy black Labrador retriever named Stormy. She goes almost everywhere with me. I'm not exactly happy. I still get upset when something triggers me to remember my ex and all that happened. I still sometimes feel a tremendous and overpowering sense of loss. I know I have lost nothing because I really had nothing, but I can't help how I feel. The beauty of my job is I mostly work alone and in the outdoor doors, and I can often take my dog to work with me. If I haven't found happiness in divorced life, at least I found peace. I'll take it. Last week, the past I thought I'd buried 2 years ago reached out from the grave. She called my cell. I don't know, she got my contact info. Couldn't have been too hard. I wasn't exactly hiding. We spoke for an hour. It was amicable at first, and she made it sound as though she just wanted to see how I'm doing and catch up. But the hidden purpose of the call was to feel me out about some kind of reconnection. She gave birth to a healthy baby girl 2 years prior. Paternity was never in question because of the timing. The AP wasn't present for the birth and has had little interaction with his daughter. The life of a single mother is hard, and although she was getting support from the AP, Apparently she had to take him to court for it. She was lonely and unhappy. I told her I was sorry to hear she was unhappy, but it was not my problem. I told her she had broken my heart, and it was still broken today. I told her in as many words I did not love her, could not love anyone, and wanted nothing to do with her. I said to her that she made all the choices for all of us, for her, for me, and for her daughter. She left me with but one choice, and that was to walk away from her. I asked her not to contact me again. The final similarity between all of our stories on this sub is this. A selfish person made a selfish choice and damaged the lives of 3 people, one of whom had not even been born yet. If there was one thing I wish I could make cheaters understand before they make the selfish choice, is that they are hurting everyone around them, and possibly everyone around their AP. But if they are already selfish enough to cheat, it's likely they won't care. Update 1. I posted my story here a few weeks ago. In the 3 years since we separated and divorced, I've made a new life for myself, but it has been a solitary life, one that is absent of friendships and trust. After reading and conversing with many of you guys, I realized I should not be giving her so much power over my life. He was right. I thought I was living my new life on my own terms. I wasn't. By keeping myself closed off and mistrustful, I was still making payments on an emotional debt I didn't even owe. When I left my ruined marriage behind, I said I took nothing with me. That wasn't exactly true. I still had my wedding ring. I don't know why I held on to it for this long. I kept it in a cigar box with a few other mementos. I attached no emotional significance to the ring, but in retrospect, I wonder if its very presence in my home was a siphon on whatever positive energy I might be building. The day before yesterday, my dog Stormy and I went fishing in the Gulf for gag grouper. December 31st was the last day of the season. On a whim, I took my wedding ring with me. I threw it into the Gulf of Mexico. It's now at the bottom of Swanee Sound, about 15 miles west of Long Cabbage Key. When that little sliver of gold sank below the placid blue-green water of the Gulf, I felt like it took an enormous load off my shoulders, and like an anchor, that ring sank that emotional load into the sand bottom some 70 feet below. You guys were all correct. It is not enough to survive infidelity and divorce. It's time to live again. I have started dating again, a local girl I had met casually. We went to a party together last night and had a great time together. I owe you folks a debt. Your comments and PMs made me realize something I didn't even see myself. To the new folks who are just starting down this road, listen to the advice you will receive on the sub. These people have been where you are now. Don't spend long mourning what you think you lost. That grief is a weight that you carrying for nothing. The people you carry it for betrayed you. Freedom begins the moment you realize all you need to do it, put it down. It's time to live again. Update 2. For the past 3 years, I have declined to pursue any kind of dating or relationships. I finally decided to open myself up to finding love again and started dating. I have been seeing a girl a year younger than me. She has ever been married. It has been going pretty well. We've been getting more serious and having relationship conversations. It was in one of those she dropped a bombshell on me. She told me she was very interested in polyamory relationships and could never be satisfied with just one partner. I hate to admit this, but I needed to have that concept explained to me. That is how not into it or just old-fashioned I am. She explained we could have multiple partners as long as it was only physical and we always came back to each other for emotional bonding. First off, I thanked her for being upfront about it. When this kind of thing has kept secret, it's trouble, so kudos to her for honesty. I told her I was very attracted to her, enjoyed her company, and would be very happy to be one of her partners in the short term, but when it comes to building a relationship, we both be better served looking elsewhere. She said she was sorry because she really liked me but understood. It was a pretty surreal conversation for me. Am I a dinosaur? Are there women out there who even want faithful men? Or is the concept out of date? My wife had an affair, and my next girlfriend wanted to go on a double date with her and some other guy and me set up with one of her friends. Update 3. Today is my anniversary, not my wedding anniversary. That day comes and goes without notice. 3 years ago today, I received the finalization of my divorce. I shared my story on this sub last year. If you care to read it, you can find it on my profile. Someone even put it on YouTube, surprisingly. But the short version is my once beloved and now ex-wife had a year-and-a-half on-again off-again affair that resulted in her getting pregnant with her apiece daughter. When the secret could no longer be kept, she told me it could be our baby and we could raise her together and some other stuff about how sorry she was and it would never happen again. There could only be one answer to all that, and today is the 3-year anniversary of my response. I'm fine. In truth, she rarely crosses my mind anymore. I'm not sad. I'm not really happy either. The truth is I'm just sort of okay these days. I'm just fine. I guess I really can't describe it in any other way. So, and this is the question I'm really struggling with, why does everyone tell me I'm not? My sister and her best friend came to visit Florida before school started. They are both attending the University of Memphis this year. I am so proud of her. They spent 2 days at my place before going down to Tampa. We had a talk while they were here, and she said she was worried about me. She is convinced I'm not over everything that happened. She told me I seem so different now that she barely recognized me. I'm still the same guy, I said to her. She thinks I'm unhappy, but I'm not. I'm just fine. Without my knowledge, her and her friend set up a dating app on my phone and went hunting for dates for me. They started talking to 2 women, then told me about it and insisted I continued the conversations after they left. I deleted all of it, then lied to her about it. I feel bad about that, but I really don't want her to worry. I want her to know I'm fine. I'm close friends with my boss and his wife. She tells me, "It's not good for you to be alone all the time, and you would be a great catch." She has tried to set me up with friends, but I'm just not interested. So I ended up telling her I'm seeing someone. I hate lying about it, and I really appreciate their concern, but I'm fine, really. I've had 2 short relationships and 1 fling since my divorce. The fling, the girl turned out to be married. I was furious. I told her in no uncertain terms what I thought of her. 1 relationship, we just were not a match. The other died of indifference, mostly on my part. I'm just not comfortable around people in an intimate way like that. I just am not interested in a relationship. Maybe I just have nothing to give to one. I am different from how I used to be. I used to be sociable and outgoing, now not so much. Is that bad that I've changed? I can still make emotional bonds. I love my sister to death. I love my dog. My dog is awesome. She is my best friend, fishing buddy, and all-around partner in crime. She is the ultimate ride or die. But in social situations now, I feel so uncomfortable and awkward I just want to leave. Is that normal? I don't know. I feel most comfortable on the boat far enough out in the Gulf you lose sight of land, under a wide open sky with no one for 20 miles in any direction. I'm not emotionless. I'm just not emotional. I don't really get angry or sad or happy. I'm just fine all the time. Maybe that is quite different from the old me, but is that bad? There are a lot of folks on this sub who have survived infidelity. How are you doing? Are you healed? Do people tell you you're not? How would you even know? Betrayal leaves us different than it finds us. Who you were before is not going to be who you were after. That doesn't seem hard to grasp, does it? The people who are asking are worried about us, I know, and we love them for that, but really, we're just fine. Update 4. My divorce became final 3 years ago today. I don't think about it much anymore. I loved my wife. She was the love of my life. I say that now almost by rote. I don't even really remember how that felt sometimes. I can't even picture what she looked like. She was supposed to be the most important person in the world, and now it's been just 41 months since I last saw her, and sometimes I can't even remember her face. The night she told me her terrible secret, that he had been having an affair and that she was pregnant by him, I remember that clearly. She had rejected all affection for me for months. I shouldn't have been surprised, I guess. The red flags were there. I knew, but I wouldn't admit. I've posted on Reddit about the events leading up to that night in the aftermath before. I really don't think about it much and speak of it even less. But tonight being the 3-year mark, I guess I'm reliving it. That doesn't make me sad or anything. Maybe I'd be better off if it did. I've been pretty unemotional since the night of D-Day. It was like the whole world got quiet. All voices and sounds became muted in my head to a low buzz. At the same time, all things became crystal clear to me. The future, the present, the past, all became an inexorable succession of events leading to an inevitable conclusion. The wife I loved was gone. The life I hoped for was lost. It never even existed. It was all done and over and now just a mundane exercise and awaiting the end of the process. I didn't even yell at her. I wasn't even angry. I was just numb. I just told her it was over and I was filing for divorce. 2 weeks later, I was gone. Even now, thinking back on it, it does not make me angry. No pain, no heartache, no longing, just nothing. The lesson I take from all of this is that the world is an impermanent place. All things pass. Even the things that seem so important at the time are only fleeting. Just let them go. Love people. Everything is passing by us like no more than train in the night, with us for a brief time then fading into the distance. Don't hold on to what's been lost. Admit that it is lost, and let it go. To cling to what's gone is vanity, and it only hurts you. Update 5. So now I have a new life in a new state in the USA and feel like I'm doing okay. But my family and friends keep telling me that I might need help because my personality is so radically different from the man I used to be. There is some truth to that. I am aware of it. I used to be happier and more outgoing. Now I just prefer the company of my dog. I don't foster friendships, haven't dated much, and generally prefer to keep to myself. But I don't feel anything is wrong with me. I went through a traumatic event, yes, but it makes sense the equilibrium you settle into after might be a far country from where you were before, right? My sister visited me a few months ago and after 3 days was begging me to get help. So I started individual counseling. Some of the counselor's advice has seemed good, but the whole thing seems to be heading down a rabbit hole. One of the first things she asked me was when was the last time I felt truly happy or sad. I had to think about it for a moment and realized it had been a long time. The last time I had really felt any strong emotion was the night my marriage ended. Since then, I've just been okay. After discussing it for a few sessions, she said I had PTSD with a flat effect and is referring me to a psychiatrist and a neurologist. She is also talking about psychoactive medications that, based on internet research, have some undesirable side effects and are kind of expensive. I have a bad feeling this thing is getting out of control. She's talking about doctors, hospitals, strong medications, and suddenly I'm thinking maybe it's okay to just be okay. I am seriously considering a different therapist of just forgetting this whole thing. Any advice would be appreciated. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Rejected my daughter's Father's Day gift because I'm still angry about my ex-wife's affair that my daughter hid from me. After making her cry, I realized my mistake. My ex-wife 40F and I 41M have been divorced for a year now because she had an affair. She herself confessed to her affair a year later and moved in with her affair partner who she's also now married to. I was pretty distraught with the whole thing. We also have a daughter 17F. My daughter knew about the affair, but she told me she hid it from me because she didn't want to break up the family. It really hurt me that she hid it from me for so long, but I moved on. My daughter still apologizes for it, but I've told her it's all right. My daughter today gave me a Father's Day gift, which was a handwritten letter and a gift. However, I was in no mood for gifts, so I told her to keep it to herself. My daughter seemed a bit shocked and she went to her room, and I think she was crying as she went to her room. Was I the ah? Now for some comments. Comment 1. Yes, Emo, you say you told her it's all right. You say you moved on. How do your actions live up to those words? At least be honest with yourself and then her. Either move on or don't, but don't say everything all right and then not accept a gift from your daughter. Plus maybe factor in she's a kid and in a tough spot between her parents when you make some of these evaluations. Comment 2. Very few adults would have the courage to speak up in this scenario. Never mind a kid who probably didn't want to hurt her dad. She needs your grace and you need to show her how a person can move forward when life is difficult. Comment 3. Yes, sorry for what happened to you, but UDA. Can you imagine the position she was in? A child, your child. She was afraid her home would break. Her nightmare came true and you did this. You told her it's okay and then crapped on her as if this was her fault. Shame on you. I get this is still raw for you, but what about her? Comment 4. Seriously, Opie, do you expect a 17-year-old teenager to choose between her mother and her father? She was probably scared she would be hated by one of her parents. It's not her fault like WTF. It was the mother's affair. She had nothing to do with it and probably needs support as well. Jesus dude. Comment 5. They've been divorced for a year, so she found out 14-13, that's still middle school. A child shouldn't be in charge of their parents' marriage. Yuta. Just wanted to provide a quick update. I did feel guilty after rejecting my daughter's gift yesterday, and after reading a few comments it confirmed that I was in awe. I went to her room yesterday and apologized for everything. It really hurt me that I made her cry that much. I told her that I didn't mean it and we had a chat. I got the gift and the letter was really sweet and heartfelt and I thanked her. I felt really touched after reading it and I will preserve it forever. For the rest of the day, I took her out on a shopping trip and then in the evening we went to theaters to watch a movie. She seemed very happy. At night we had one more serious chat where I told her it wasn't her fault at all. She said she still feels very guilty about hiding the whole affair from me because even though she hated her mom for the affair, she was worried about exposing the affair because of how the whole family would fall apart. I told her that she shouldn't feel guilty about anything and it's not her fault at all, and it's only her mom's fault. We then talked a bit about her mom and she agreed that if there's one thing she learned from the entire thing, it's not to emulate her mom when she's an adult. I agreed and also told her it was unfortunate that she got such a mom. I told her we both need individual therapy to deal with the divorce and her mom's selfish actions, and my daughter was open to it, so we will start looking for a therapist soon. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My cheating wife got totally exposed and destroyed in court after trying to falsely accuse me. I 34M met her online a decade ago doing a 52 books in 52 weeks reading challenge. She 36F posted that she was undergoing chemo radiation for stage 4 cancer. I organized a care package and sent it to her. I had no romantic interest in her and didn't even know what she looked like at the time. She messaged me a couple of days later saying that she cried when she saw the package at her doorstep. "Nobody has ever done this thoughtful for me before," she said. We continued to exchange messages and became friends over our shared interest in books. Eventually, the friendship morphed into a long-distance relationship. I flew to Texas to see her. She flew to Pennsylvania to see me, back and forth, back and forth. In 2015, she permanently moved to Pennsylvania. I put a down payment on a house. She was broke. I proposed to her later, 11 months later, and we got married the following year. She had a laundry list of psychiatric problems. Bad anxiety, severe depression, horrible PTSD from SA, etc., which I was aware of but didn't realize their severity until we started to live together. But I was committed to her at that point. Like penguins, I commit for life, the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. Over the next 7 years, I was there for every low point in her life. By the time our marriage was ending, she was at the highest point in her life. All her psychiatric problems were under control. Her career was blossoming while working from home the entire time and making the most money she's ever made. She later wrote in court documents that I made her take that job so I can control her, the weasel. She was cheating on me with lived in New York, and she used the need to visit the company's office in New York as a cover to see him for at least 2 years. I started seeing him before co-started. Is all I got out of her because she didn't want to talk about the affair. She was most likely cheating on me the entire time we lived together because she's been making these trips to the New York office since 2015. In 7 years of living together, we had one fight on our honeymoon in Key West, Florida. She got so mad at me when I called a checkup on my parents. We made up and she learned to accept that my parents are extremely important to me, and I continued to call them daily. She did seem to mind. Remove the stress of children, we didn't have any, and money, we both had great careers, and there was nothing much to argue about. What looked like a good marriage was in reality a parasite-host relationship. As I learned more about her toward the end of our marriage, I realized that this was not a woman. This is a parasite who used me to stabilize her life. Once I stopped serving her purpose, she discarded me like a piece of trash. In January 2020, we flew to Oklahoma and put down a down payment on a plot of land so she can be closer to her family. Construction on the house began the following months. We permanently moved to Oklahoma in August 2020. I left my family and friends behind in Pennsylvania where I lived for 20 years just so she can be happier. She was cheating on me while the house was being built. After D-Day, I asked her over and over, "Why didn't you just divorce me if you didn't want to be married and let me stay in Pennsylvania with my family and friends?" Her only response was, "I'm a coward." According to this gutless parasite, up until our marriage, she's never been in a relationship where she wasn't treated like sexy. She was willing to drag it out and lead me on until she was finally ready to money branch into her next relationship. Naturally, you might wonder why I didn't suspect anything for years. She was love-bombing me every day. She'd kiss me and tell me how much she loves me, how much she appreciates everything I do for our family. We had 2 cats, no kids. In my birthday card prior to D-Day, she wrote, "I'm looking forward to us growing old together. Just a ton of smoke and mirrors to distract me." D-Day was December 12, 2021. She slipped up and gave me a reason to become suspicious. She was an alcoholic. She'd binge when I left for work at night, but sober for 1.5 years at this point. She said that she wants to fly to Chicago for an Alcoholics Anonymous conference. Sure, no problem. She bought a gift for her AA sponsor, who she claimed was one of the most important people in her life, but she left it at home. I thought that was very odd, but not enough for me to snoop. Later that weekend, she texted me, "I'm so up and going through the steps again." She never talked like that. I interpreted it as her getting drunk, which made no sense. You're around your sponsor and other AA members and you got drunk? I Googled to check if there was an AA conference in Chicago the weekend. There wasn't. For the first time in our marriage, I went through her iPad. I found photos of her having sex with another guy and screenshots of explicit messages he was sending to her. I'll post the full story in the future, my first and last journal entry. I will say that I made every mistake imaginable. I shed more tears than her. I considered reconciliation. I did the pick-me dance. I took her out on dates. I had sex with her, but the attraction faded very fast as I learned about her ugly personality. Soon, I couldn't look at her hideous face any longer and ended all physical contact. But for the sake of not dragging this out for too long, I filed for divorce, and it was finalized less than 2 months after D-Day. She refused to tell people the real reason why we were getting divorced. She wanted to sweep the cheating under the rug. Eventually, she relented and said that she'd tell her parents on February 1st, 2022, as she was moving out the last of her belongings. I asked if I can say goodbye to her mom, who was waiting outside. Her parents treated me like a son, as did the rest of the extended family. I told her mom, "Sorry that it didn't work out between your daughter and I," to which her mom responded, "Rest, that's okay? You were both equally responsible for this." Equally responsible? This pathological liar. I have screenshots of her lying about her identity online. Must have lied to her parents and smeared my name to her parents. Hearing her mom say that set me off. At that moment, I decided to wait until all legal documents were signed to expose her. The parasite ended up paying through her teeth financially. She wanted an uncontested divorce in our no-fault state. I guess she didn't want to stand in front of the judge and talk about her cheating. I kept the fully furnished house in 70% equity. I kept the newer paid-off car. I kept the money I was putting away every paycheck toward my parents' retirement with her approval. The moment she complained about the house equity split, I told her that I won't negotiate. Hire a lawyer. We are going to court to contest this. She didn't. I refinanced the house at a 2.75% fixed rate. What a steal. She went back to renting and signed a 1-year contract the following month. The Fed began hiking interest rates to combat inflation. The mortgage rates have at least doubled since then. Because of that, she will end up paying tens of thousands of dollars more for waiting an extra year to buy a house. On March 7, 2022, I sent a 9-page email describing her cheating and explicit details to her entire immediate and extended family, 14 people in total. I spared the sweet little grandma from reading that smut, who are all devout Christians whose lives revolve around the church. I then contacted her manager at Work It Out at her cheating. I contacted the CEO of her company and did the same. 5 days later, there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, there was a sheriff standing with papers in his hands. I was served with a restraining order for harassment and stalking. To make her case stronger, she lied and wrote that I also abused her. She asked the judge to order me to enroll into a domestic abuse program. Mind you, I've never raised my voice or my hand at this woman even after what she did to me. This is someone who makes impulsive decisions without considering long-term consequences. She lied and wrote that I never let her leave the house alone. I made her work from home so I can control her. I controlled what kind of makeup and hairstyle she could wear. I abused our cats. I made posts on this sub saying that women in other countries get jailed or killed. I made a post on this subreddit saying cheaters, not women, are punished for infidelity by fine and even jail in other countries. She replaced cheaters with women and fine with kill to make me appear violent. You should have seen the dumb look on her face when I brought that piece of evidence to the courtroom and my lawyer made her read it out loud. In the end, she still ended up standing in front of a judge in a packed courtroom and being exposed as a cheater, something which she desperately tried to avoid earlier. After multiple delays, I finally had the restraining order hearing 6 months later. She looked absolutely sexy when she walked it. Those 6 months have not been kind to her. It looked like she has gained more weight. She was already fat before, her stomach fat still visible even though she tried her best to hide it. She tried to cover her acne scars with makeup, but it looked so bad, like a kabuki mask. Apparently, my email caused a lot of problems within the family. Of course, she never took any accountability and blamed me in the courtroom for sending it. The entire hearing lasted less than 10 minutes. She presented zero evidence. I had extensive evidence to disprove every single one of her claims, but only needed to present one. Months and months of credit card statements showing that she was going to stores, restaurants, cafes, etc. while I was at work. Photos of us out together in her wearing different hairstyles and makeup. At one point, the judge turned to her and asked, "Do you have any evidence to prove what you're claiming? Any witnesses who can corroborate what you are saying?" She replied, "No." Her case was thrown out due to lack of evidence. The only reason why I haven't pressed charges against her for false allegations of abuse is because I don't want to be stuck in another 6-month-long legal battle with this parasite. In the courtroom, she tried to portray as if I was obsessed with her. I've moved on with my life a long time ago and I'm exponentially happier than I've ever been while with her. I realize now that I was never happy with her. I was only content. Ironically, cancer brought us together and I didn't find happiness until I excised the cancer out of my life. If she ever tries to contact me in the future, I'm going straight to police and pressing charges for false allegations of abuse. On the 1-year anniversary of D-Day, or Liberation Day as my friend calls it, I went out to celebrate. I celebrated because I averted a catastrophe by 11 days. A couple of weeks prior to D-Day, she and I were driving in the car. She turned to me and said, "I feel like you use me for sex, cooking, and laundry." Words cannot describe how horrible I felt as a husband. I felt like the worst husband in the world. I couldn't believe I made her feel that way. I pulled my mask up and tears started pouring down my cheeks. This is the first time I've ever cried in front of her. When we got home, she clarified that she feels like that because we don't share deep conversations. We talk about our daily life, but we don't have deep conversation. In retrospect, this parasite was projecting. In reality, she was using me the entire time. We had marriage therapy scheduled for December 23rd. 11 days prior, I discovered her cheating. I must have had a guardian angel watching over me. Otherwise, I'd be in therapy now working on ways to make her happy, while she is sneaking behind my back and cheating on me. Update. This is an alternate account for privacy and anonymity. My primary account was cited in the courtroom 1 year ago. I discovered that the woman with whom I've been with for close to a decade was cheating on me. I posted on this at 2 days after D-Day looking for support, because my support system was 1,000 miles away. I was so afraid to tell my parents. A year earlier, on Thanksgiving, my dad wrote that he is most thankful for one of his sons being settled in life, having a good career in a family of his own, and once my brother has a family of his own, my mom and dad would succeed his parents. I honestly thought that my news would devastate them so much that they'd both end up in the hospital. Like many others in my original post, I blamed myself for her cheating. Why wasn't I a better husband, so she wouldn't feel the need to seek attention elsewhere? Thankfully, this group stepped in and collectively advised me to file for divorce. I follow this subreddit closely to reciprocate for helping me through tough times. I will offer an update on my story. This one has a happy ending. Perhaps it will motivate you to go on your own journey of self-improvement or provide the impetus to leave your cheating partner. or at the very least it will put a smile on your face reading about a cheater being exposed. Here is the summary of the past decade with her. After discovering her cheating, I was crushed. Self-esteem was gone. Self-worth non-existent. I decided to go on a journey of self-improvement to find my self-esteem and self-worth again. What helped me to regain my self-esteem was setting goals, then going out and achieving those goals. My weight loss journey started a couple of weeks prior to D-Day. Her cheating kicked it into another gear. I joined a gym a couple of days after D-Day. Over the next 11 months, I lost close to 60 pounds. Here as one of the photos a little over a month after D-Day. I signed up on a whim to run a marathon. I was still overweight at the time and hadn't ran a mile since playing high school soccer, but I had 87 days to prepare and I was determined to finish the marathon at any cost. I finished the marathon in a little over 5 hours. You can read more about my couch to marathon story here. After finishing the race, my self-esteem shot up. If I can do this, I can do anything I set my mind to. I'm currently looking for an endurance coach to train for a triathlon. A couple of months after the marathon, a friend challenged me to do a bodybuilding. It was so outside of my comfort zone to stand half naked in front of a large crowd next to competitors who have much more experience than me and to be judged, but I accepted the challenge. With only 16 weeks to prepare, I needed professional help. I hired a personal trainer. Here is a collage of my physical transformation since D-Day, culminating in getting on a bodybuilding stage and winning a medal. At this point, I'm looking good and feeling good. Self-esteem is through the roof and I'm losing confidence. I'm currently training for one more show in June and one in October 2023. I made a wager that I will take home the first place in my class in October this year. I've been purposefully putting myself outside of my comfort zone. After 10 years as a registered nurse working with adults, an opportunity came up to work with children. This is way outside of my comfort zone. Health problems, common medications, and communication in general is completely different between adults and children, but I jumped at the opportunity and have absolutely loved it. Today, I work at a children's psychiatric hospital where we provide crisis intervention for homicidal, suicidal, and self-harming children ages 5 to 17. Since the divorce, I will double my income in the first fiscal year. The goal for 2023 is to bring in $200,000. I'm in the last semester for my master's degree. I should be finished in the next couple of months. I took a 7-day, 10-state, 5,000-mile road trip to Montana with my best friend. While married, I always wanted to visit Montana but never pulled the trigger. We had an absolute blast. The highlight was going on a fishing charter, each one of us catching a 29-plus-inch lake trout, then cooking it at our lakeside cabin. The goal for 2023 is to cross off a bunch of other states on the visit every state in the U.S. bucket list. I'll be hitting Alaska, PNW, and C states this year. I've invested more time and money toward my health and well-being than I did for the past 10 years combined while married to her. I attended 3 individual therapy sessions. My 4th session lasted 15 minutes. I had nothing to discuss about the past and wanted to focus on the future instead. As Wayne Gretzky said, I stake where the puck is going to be, know where it has been. The therapist said that he didn't feel like I needed any more sessions because I was doing so well. It's been a complete recovery. At that point, I have no triggers. I used to get a recurrent nightmare of the two of them laughing at me, the clueless husband. Those nightmares stopped once she lied in the restraining order about me abusing her. At that point, I realized that this parasite doesn't have an ounce of care for me, so why should I for her? The weasel's birthday is 9 days before my own, and I completely forgot about it this year. On D-Day, or as my friend calls it, Liberation Day, I went out to celebrate. In regards of my romantic endeavors, I waited until the restraining order case against me was dismissed before pursuing women. I whiffed on my first try. I asked a coworker 40+ F out on a date and was hit with, "I'll think about it and I'll let you know" reply. Ouch. In my mind, if it wasn't an enthusiastic yes, then it's a no. A friend suggested the Hinge dating app. I had a bunch of success there, lots of matches. Took one woman 38 F out on a date. I'll preface this by mentioning that the last time I courted a woman was a decade ago. We were sending each other love letters through snail mail. This woman and I clicked very well while messaging each other, and then a couple of hours prior to the date fireworks. I told her that I have the date covered and don't want her to reach her purse to pay for anything. Also that I will hold the door for her wherever we go. Well, she didn't appreciate that. You should have put that in your dating profile. This is 2022 and most women don't need a man to pay for them or hold their doors. Prior to this, I asked what her boundaries are regarding holding hands, hugging, and kissing on the first date. She said that she needs to feel comfortable just to hold hands on the first date. Fine, it will be an Amish date. It will be like taking my sister out on a date. Needless to say, it get tense a couple of hours prior to meeting up. I asked if she wants to cancel. No hard feelings if you do. To which she replied, "No, I'm intrigued by you. I could have canceled, but honestly I wanted to see how much of a disaster the date will turn out to be. I imagine dinner to be the dinner scene for Mr. and Mrs. Smith, followed by the scene where they're trying to murder each other. We met up and actually had a great time. Had a drink, then took a private Latin dance class, and at dinner afterward, no tense moments or awkwardness. At dinner, I told her that even though I had a great time and found her attractive, I don't see this going past the first date. Even though we meshed well that night, we'd clash in the future because of our personalities. I walked her to her car. She was gushing over me the entire time. She gave me a long, lingering hug and we parted ways. When I got home, she texted me, "It looked like you wanted to kiss me all night." I replied that I did, but I respected your boundaries. She followed that with, "Maybe I should have kissed you then." I told her to come over the next night to cook dinner at my place. She obliged. 24 hours later, we were fooling around in my bed. She said that she wants us to date casually. Perfect for me, that gives me time to focus on my other goals. I ended up ending it with her a couple of days later because she disrespected me. After the parasite I was married to was so disrespectful toward the end of our marriage, I vowed to never let another woman disrespect me ever again. Had I started dating immediately after the divorce, I'd have probably put up with a lot of because my self-esteem was gutted at the time. And then I met my current girlfriend. I matched with a gorgeous Latina 33F who was not only open to chivalry but welcomed it. In our conversation, she said things like, "It'd be an honor to go on a date with you." No woman has ever said that to me before. Since day one, she has done nothing but build me up instead of criticizing the way that Parasite used to do. When we met up, she immediately went for a hug. She held my hand while we were still in the parking lot and waited for me to open her door throughout the night. At the bar, she touched my arm and shoulder while laughing. We went dancing, and while she was so much more experienced as a dancer compared to me, I have no dancing experience and have 2 left feet, it felt so natural and sexy to dance with her. I didn't feel like a robot on the dance floor the same way I felt on the first date with the other woman. Our hands were all over each other and she was kissing my neck as more ate all over the dance floor. At one point, the dance instructor left the room to let us do our thing. After dinner, I took her to my employee party because she loves to dance. I slipped the DJ at $20 and requested her song. We danced while everyone else watched us. She had a beaming smile from ear to ear and rubbing up against me all night like a female cat in heat. By the end of the night, she broke her own rule of no French kissing on the first date. She came over to my house 3 days later and we've been seeing each other every day since then. We deleted our dating apps after the second date and have been in a committed monogamous relationship ever since. We were born half a world away from each other, yet our cultures are so similar. I didn't expect to find someone like her this soon. I thought that I'd date a bunch of women before settling down. I knew that she is the one I wanted to pursue when a very pretty redhead from Hinge finally matched with me, and I had no desire to open her message to read it. What a year it has been. It started out in the worst possible way and it's ending on the highest note imaginable, and the most exciting thing is that I feel like I've only scratched the surface to culminate the success. I commissioned an artist to do this painting titled Rebirth of a Man. For me. I told him in January 2022 about my situation, the beginning of my journey towards self-improvement, and where I see myself in the future. This was his interpretation. I had no expectations going in, and he still managed to blow them away. He delivered the painting to me shortly after I competed at the bodybuilding show. How appropriate. I hope that my story helps a bunch of you. It's so scary to leave the cheating partner. I've been there myself. At one point, I considered reconciliation before finally pulling the trigger on divorce. But know that there is an exciting world out there beyond the walls of your current relationship. You will meet someone who shows you what a healthy relationship looks like. It wasn't until I met my current girlfriend did I realize that I was never happy with the parasite I was married to. I was content while with her but never happy. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Let my sister-in-law Carrie use my house for her baby shower, but she tried to kick me out to impress her rich friend. So I told her husband, and it led to their divorce. Now she has to raise the baby alone. Hi, so I 32F have been married for the past 3 years. My husband, 35M, and I have been together for 5 years. But as of now, he has been living away from home for work. We're doing the long-distance thing, and he comes back every alternate weekend to spend some time at home. We have our own house that we bought a couple of months ago, just before he was about to leave. It's a really beautiful place, and it's close to my parents' house, so it's convenient for me to visit them and for them to visit me. The architecture is beautiful, and it's quite spacious as well, which suits me because even though it's just me living in this house, I love the feeling. It's just a beautiful house in a really good neighborhood, and I like living here. When I threw my housewarming party, I also got a lot of compliments for it before we had even unpacked or decorated the house properly. Of all of the people who seemed to like this house the most was my sister-in-law, Carrie, 32F, since she wouldn't stop gushing about it. She and I don't have a close friendship, but I would say that we have always been on good terms. So a couple of weeks back, when she asked me if I would allow her to throw her baby shower in my house, I agreed without hesitation. Even though we are not close, there were a couple of reasons due to which I agreed. The first was that she was pregnant, and I didn't want to say no to that. I also spend a lot of time alone in my house, so I thought it would be nice to meet a couple of new people and have a change of scenery for once. I even took a day off and everything. The reason was that she insisted that she wanted to have the event at my house because she did not want to shell out an extravagant amount of money to rent a venue, especially when I had such a beautiful home, and her own house was pretty, but it was not nearly as nice as the place that I lived in, and it was kind of smaller as well. I guess the flattery kind of worked on me because I couldn't bring myself to say no, and to be honest, I did not have any reason to say no because she had always been nice to me, so I agreed. I honestly did not have any clue as to what was about to come, because even while we were planning the whole thing, she did not indicate anything that would tell me that I was not exactly welcome at this baby shower. I was part of the entire planning process, and she would visit me almost every other day for the past 2 weeks so that we could sit and discuss what we wanted to do from the catering and the menu to the decorations. I was part of every bit of the planning, and I was actually looking forward to this event as well. I had thought that this experience would help us bond together even better, but at the very last minute, I was left shocked. On the day of the event, I helped the decorator set up the place about an hour before the guests were supposed to start arriving. Around 45 minutes before the event was supposed to begin, Carrie showed up and thanked me for everything. Even then, she was acting absolutely normally and was speaking to me like a friend. However, just 15 minutes before the guests were supposed to start arriving, according to the time on the invites, she turned around and asked me where I was going to spend the next couple of hours. I was a little thrown off, and I actually thought that she was joking when she asked me that question because it was literally my house that she was throwing a baby shower in. I obviously had assumed that I would be there. I had even dressed accordingly and had bought her a gift as well. So I asked if she was joking, and with a very serious face, she told me that she was not. She told me a couple of pretty valid points which had not occurred to me because I was too busy helping her. Carrie told me that I had not received an invitation and I hadn't even been on the guest list. But honestly, I hadn't noticed those things. I had just not minded it because I thought it was taken for granted that I would be invited and I would be a part of this event because I had helped to plan it and I was even allowing her to throw it in my house without having to pay for a venue. I think anybody in my place would have assumed the same things, and she and I did not have a particularly bad relationship either, so why on earth would I assume that I would not be part of the event? I told her these very things, and she told me that she was sorry about the misunderstanding, but she had just presumed that I was trying to help her out in a professional capacity, which didn't even make sense because my profession was not party planner or event organizer. I am a banker. This has nothing to do with my profession, so I don't know why she would assume that of all things. Anyway, I was feeling really upset and it was showing up on my face, I guess, so after a while, She told me that she did not want to argue with me because this was not the time for petty bickering, and she did not want to get stressed out because she was pregnant as well. So she told me that I had to leave because this event was actually only meant for close family and her immediate friend circle, so a very selective group of people was allowed to be present here because she wanted this to be small and intimate, and unfortunately I did not make the cut. She told me to leave before the guests started arriving because she did not want to make a scene, and this argument was getting her upset. I was really pissed off, so I left the room in a huff, and I decided to call up my husband immediately to complain to him what his sister had just done. I was in the backyard at the time because I did not know where else to go. I tried calling my husband, but he was busy with work and was in a meeting at the time, so he could not answer the phone and texted me about it. I was really pissed off, so I decided to do something a little unorthodox, and I decided to call his brother-in-law instead. Carrie's husband, Jim, 33M, has been with her for the past 4 years, and they have been married for 2. I haven't interacted much with the guy, but he is a generally quiet and reserved person. After the incident took place and she told me to leave my own house, I was really upset, and I wanted to get back at her, so I decided to call him and tell him everything. He heard me out, and he did not say anything for a while after I was done ranting. I told him that I was really sorry for telling him all of this, but I was just really disappointed about how I was being treated, and since I couldn't speak to her at the risk of upsetting a pregnant woman, I was telling him what happened so maybe he would talk to her later and speak some sense into her. He apologized to me on her behalf, and that kind of calmed me down. He then told me that I did not need to leave my house because that would be ridiculous, and he would be coming over in a few minutes. All I had to do was wait until then because he did not want any argument breaking out between the two of us because then we would upset each other, and he did not want that. I thought that was reasonable. I waited 15 minutes, and before the first guests even arrived, Jim showed up at my house. Carrie was kind of shocked to see him, and as soon as I heard the doorbell ring, I went inside my house. The 3 of us stood there in the living room, and Jim intervened and told me that I could obviously attend the baby shower and that I did not need to leave. Carrie tried to protest, but he just glared at her, and she kept her mouth shut after that. She kept glaring at me throughout the time that we spent there, and I made up my mind I would never interact with her ever again. I even had half a mind to cancel the baby shower, but I did not do that since I had put in a lot of effort into planning this event, and I did not want that to go to waste. Besides, after Jim had arrived, I did not have the heart to do that, and I did not feel that it was necessary either. So I decided in my head that I would just let the evening take its course, and after we were done with the baby shower, I would just stop speaking to Carrie. I maintained my grace and dignity throughout. I can't say the same for her though. Anyway, after the baby shower was over, Jim once again apologized to me for everything, while Carrie refused to even look at me, and he apologized for that as well since I was getting an unnecessary amount of attitude from her because she believed that I did not belong at the event and I had forced my way in. It was really frustrating to even witness, but at least the whole ordeal was over after that, and once they left, I finally called my husband up and I told him everything in detail. He was outraged and he wanted to have a word with his sister, but I told him not to bother at least that evening because that would only make things worse and would lead to more heated arguments, and that's the last thing that I wanted. I just wanted a bit of peace, but I guess that's not in the cards for me, at least as of now because the very next morning, I received a call from my in-laws, and they were really pissed off. They told me that after the baby shower, once Carrie and her husband had reached home, they had gotten into a huge fight about what I had said, and now Jim had decided to leave and was refusing to speak to Carrie or even anybody else from her family, including my in-laws. This was unheard of because from what we knew, Jim had a really good relationship with his in-laws as they were old family friends of his parents, but now after the fight that they had, his entire family had blocked them on social media and everywhere else, so it was very clear that they did not want to interact with him. I honestly did not understand what I had to do with any of this, but my in-laws and Carrie apparently believed that if I had just sucked it up and decided to do what Carrie had told me to, they could not be in this situation in the first place. I thought that it was outrageous that they were trying to pin the blame for this on me since it was so obvious that it was Carrie's fault, and I had nothing to do with any of this. So I ended up lashing out at them, and I told them that I was not going to take them for this because I knew very well that it was not my fault. It was Carrie who had been ungrateful to me because I had very graciously allowed her to throw the baby shower in my house free of cost. But instead of respecting that and respecting the relationship that we had, She decided to humiliate me by telling me that I couldn't attend an event that was being hosted in my own house and wanted me to leave because apparently she did not think I was close enough as a member of her family. I also ended up telling them that had my husband been around, she would not have dared to try and pull something like this off. I had no regrets about telling her husband about what she had been trying to do because he was the only level-headed person in the situation, and if he had decided that he had had enough and wanted to leave, I was sure that he was making the right decision because I trusted his judgment. So I was not going to try and do anything to fix the situation because I did not think I did anything wrong, and I also did not believe that Jim was doing anything wrong, and if he wanted to get a divorce, he had my support. I was not going to talk to him or take anything back, so if my in-laws were calling me to tell me that they wanted me to speak to him and fix this, they would have to be disappointed because I was not doing any of that. After saying that, I hung up, and since then we haven't spoken, but they have been doing their best to try and get me to respond to them. It has been 2 days, and while I haven't blocked them yet, I am considering it because they kept telling me that whatever problems there were, it was between me and Carrie, and I had no reason to involve him in this. I don't understand where that's coming from because even if it's between me and Carrie, it was my decision to tell her husband about it. And since he is part of the family as well, I thought he should have known. I don't think I did anything wrong by ratting her out because she was behaving badly with me, and she was being ungrateful. I thought her husband deserved to know how she was acting since I knew that he was a rational person and would do something about it. They are trying their best to manipulate the facts and trying their best to make me feel bad about it. But I can't help it. I don't feel bad in the slightest about what is happening to her, and they keep reiterating the fact that now just because of my decision, her future child might grow up without a father figure in their life. I honestly think that it's a bit of a stretch, but that's how they are putting it, and I don't even know what to say to that. The only reason I haven't blocked them yet is because of the way that they are saying things, and it's kind of forcing me to second-guess myself, even though my husband does not think I did anything wrong, and he's told me that he's going to try and talk to his parents and make them realize that this was not my fault. It was Carrie's, and if anything, they should be talking to her about it and being there for her instead of trying to attack me right now. I have no idea how to go about the situation. I don't feel sorry, but judging by the way that they are acting right now, I don't think that they will drop it anytime soon, and I just feel like getting this over with. I also don't even know why Carrie did what she did, so I don't have any answers at the moment. AITA for involving my sister-in-law's husband in our argument and telling him how she was acting? Date 1. Hello. I'm back here. And now it has been almost 1 week since the baby shower. Carrie and Jim are still getting divorced, and it's final now. She hasn't commented on it yet publicly, but he has announced it on his social media, so that's big news. I didn't think that it was going to happen so soon, but apparently he has already filed the petition, and they're going to start proceedings pretty soon. They have been living separately since Jim moved back in with his parents. From what I know, I managed to speak to him, even though I did not think it would be appropriate after everything that had happened because I was kind of feeling like I was guilty, but after discussing it with my husband, he thought that at least somebody from our family should reach out to him, and he and I were the only 2 people that had not blocked, so obviously meant that he was keeping these avenues open in case we wanted to speak to him. So I decided to reach out to him, and I said that I was sorry about everything that was happening, but I did not make it sound like an apology. I just made it sound like I was sorry in general. In spite of that, I guess he was able to tell that I was feeling guilty about it, and so he told me that I did not have to blame myself or beat myself up about it. He had been on the edge for quite some time. After a lot of hesitation, I texted him back, and I asked him what was going on because I felt that I deserved to get some answers as well. And boy did I get all the answers that I had been looking for. We hopped onto a call when I told him that I wanted to know more about what was going on, and he felt like I deserved some answers as well because I had absolutely no idea why Carrie would not want me to attend the baby shower because as far as I knew, she had only cited one reason as to why she did not want to be there, and that was that she only wanted close family to be part of the event, but at the same time, she had invited a lot of people who to my knowledge were not exactly close to her, and I had been through the guest list. I knew that there were a lot of people who were going to be in attendance. It just didn't make sense as to why I would not be part of those people since I did not have anything against those people, and to my knowledge, neither did they. And then Jim told me that the real reason she did not want me there was because she had expected one of her friends to attend whom she was trying to impress quite desperately. This friend of hers had married into quite a rich industrialist family, And now that Carrie was planning on starting her own business just a couple of months after her baby was born, she wanted her to convince her friend's husband to invest in her business. She was doing everything in her power to impress this woman, and in order to do that, she had hosted the baby shower at my place, and she planned on telling everyone that it was her house. Obviously, she could not do that if I was around, and that's why she had wanted me out, but I had fought back, and she hadn't accounted for that. However, luckily, her friend felt sick that day and was not able to attend the event at all, but it did not absolve her of the fact that she had tried to be sneaky, and when they had gotten home, he had confronted her about what she had said to me, and she had told him that she had only wanted me to stay out of the event because she wanted to impress her friend, and she did not want to acknowledge that the house did not belong to her, and she was acting as if all of this was totally normal. Going out of your way to pretend to have a life that you did not really live just to impress somebody you went to school with. Jim told her that it was not okay for her to act this way and that she needed to apologize to me because I had been gracious, and she had just humiliated me, but she refused to acknowledge the fact that what she did was wrong and got into a fight with him. They had been having a lot of problems because of this pretentious thing that she was doing, and apparently this was not even the first time that she had been caught trying to be somebody who she was not. From what Jim told me, I gathered that apparently they had been having problems like these for the past couple of years. Shortly after they got married, something had gotten into her, and ever since their wedding, she had started doing this thing where she was trying to live beyond their means and show everybody that they were rich and led a luxurious life just to impress people who did not count. Apparently, some of her friends had made weird comments about the arrangements at her wedding, and I guess that had really gotten under her skin, but she is a grown woman. She should not let petty things like that bother her, and she should have just cut these friends off because they are not real friends if they make fun of your lifestyle and what you can afford. Besides, it's not even like the two of them are living in squalor. They just have a normal life and maybe they cannot afford extravagant things, but I still think they have it pretty good. Jim is a real estate agent and Carrie is currently employed at a marketing firm, but she plans on starting her own business after the baby is born, all the more reason for her to be saving money, and instead of spending it. They are comfortable, not wealthy, but that's completely fine, and I don't think that it's anybody else's business, and Carrie does not need to impress anyone. Jim had tried to explain these things to Carrie several times, but it just didn't make any difference to her, and she just kept going out of her way to do weird things in order to impress the people around her, which had been causing a lot of problems between the two of them in the past few years. He had always let it go because he loved her so much, but in the last few months, it had become more and more difficult for him to let things slide because they also had to think about their future child now, and it would not be possible if she just kept spending money like it meant nothing, especially given their financial status when it did mean something and they could not afford the kind of lifestyle that she wanted. She kept buying and purchasing things without even bothering to consult him, and he was getting sick of it. They had been fighting about things like this too frequently anyway, and after the fight after the baby shower, Jim decided that he could not take it anymore and decided to leave. He told me that even if I hadn't called him up that day, at the rate that things were going in their marriage, he might have made this decision sooner or later anyway, so I did not need to feel sorry about what I did. I talked to my husband about this as well, and he said that while he was sorry that all of this was happening to Carrie, he could not say that he felt that it was unjustified in any way whatsoever. We did not know Jim as a friend, but we knew that he had been a good husband to Carrie so far, and if he had made the decision to leave, I'm sure that he would have thought things through, and I do feel bad for Carrie as well because I know this can't be easy to deal with while she's pregnant. But honestly, she dug this grave for herself. I don't know what kind of grown woman cares about what a few irrelevant gossipy vapid friends of hers think about her lifestyle. She is in her 30s. I think she should leave this high school stuff behind. I'm gonna hope that they can talk to each other and work it out. But for Jim's sake, I hope that they get to spend some time away from each other and decide what they want to do about it. Anyway, I'm not gonna get caught up in all of this, and I'm gonna try my best to stay away from these people for now because I think they have a lot on their plate as it is. I am gonna block both Carrie and my in-laws because I don't think I have anything left to say to them at this point, and I hope that they are able to work through things, and maybe the divorce will get called off or maybe not. I don't know what's gonna happen with them because Jim has announced the divorce like I had mentioned in this post earlier, but while we were talking, he still sounded very upset about things, and I was getting this feeling that maybe he wanted to sort things out with her and wanted to give her a chance, but she was just being so stubborn about everything that he was finding it hard to do so. Now this might be a controversial opinion, but I think they should at least try to work things out, and maybe she should go to therapy or something because it's not normal to be acting this way in your 30s trying to impress people who don't even matter. All I know is that I would want things to work out for the sake of their child. Growing up as a child of divorce is never easy, and I don't think I would want that for my future niece or nephew. So for their sake, I hope it works out between the two of them. I'll keep you guys posted on that, but for now, I'm just going to stay out of all of this and hope for the best. And my husband is also going to do the same thing. We are going to meet this weekend because he's coming back home, but this time I don't think he's going to be visiting his parents. I'm just happy that I don't have anything to feel guilty about anymore. Update 2. Hi, so my husband returned a couple of hours ago, and we have been talking. He told me that he has stayed in touch with Jim, and the two of them have been talking for the past couple of days. Jim has made it very clear that if Carrie apologizes to him for everything and agrees to go to therapy, he is ready to give their marriage a second chance. So now my husband is trying to communicate that to his sister, but he hasn't received an answer so far, and his parents have told him that she's just avoiding speaking to anybody at the moment because she's very upset and needs some time to herself. So I guess everybody's giving her the space she needs right now. I don't know what decision she's going to make, but I hope she makes a wise choice. And about the last post, here people were calling me selfish because you guys thought that my husband and I were being greedy by not helping Jim and Carrie. First of all, I don't even know how many of you came to that conclusion, but let me just clarify that we got this house at a good price, which is why we were able to purchase it. If it had been out of budget, we would not have purchased this house. Secondly, Jim and Carrie are in a perfectly stable financial position, and I don't think they would appreciate us treating them like they needed our charity. Besides, my husband and I are also kind of in the same bracket as them, so I don't know why they would need our help or vice versa. That's just weird and irrelevant. But since some of you guys brought it up, I felt like I had to clarify. Some of you also did not appreciate the fact that I said that I wanted the two of them to work things out and get back together because you guys believe that Jim deserves better, and well, maybe he does, but it's his choice at the end of the day. I don't understand why so many of you want to spew hate on here and call me all sorts of names and call Jim a doormat without even knowing the kind of person that he is. They love each other. In spite of the problem that they are having right now, they are going to have a baby together. I think that's a pretty big deal. They can't just dump each other and go on with their lives given the circumstances. So yes, I did and I still do hope that they are able to work things out. I think that's all that I have to say for now. Update 3. Hello. It has been almost 3 weeks since I got on here last, and I just wanted to tell you guys that Jim and Carrie have decided to patch things up and work it out. I'm really happy for them, even though I'm still not on speaking terms with Carrie. But I got to know from my husband that the two of them have decided that they are going to go for marriage counseling for a couple of months and see how it goes. We are still going to continue living separately, and once the baby is born, they are going to co-parent for the first few months, and then if everything goes well, they are going to move back in together, and that's how it's going to be. I'm happy for them. I know that this is not something that a lot of you wanted, and most people actually wanted Jim to leave Carrie, but lucky for him, he's going to do what's right for him, and everybody else just has to deal with it. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Wife cheated with my rich boss and called me a broke loser when I confronted her and said that I can never treat her as well as my boss does and that she wants a divorce. So this is what I did. I 26M have been married to my wife Zoe 23F for 1 year. We had been together for the last 4 years, and in spite of our differences, we had been able to make it so far. Zoe and I come from very different kinds of families, and she has had a very different life from mine. We met each other when we were in college at a mutual friend's birthday party. It was pretty much love at first sight for me because she was the most beautiful person I had ever seen, and when I started talking to her, I realized that she was just as charming as she was beautiful. Over the course of the next couple of months, we got to know each other better through text, and we went out on a lot of dates before getting into a relationship. But it was not until we had started living together that she told me about her family. That had always been a huge question mark for me, since she had told me that she did not want me to meet her family, as she did not get along well with them and had been in no contact with them for a couple of years. After being together for almost a year, I finally told her that I wanted her to tell me more about her family because it felt like she was hiding something from me on purpose, and I was not comfortable with that idea since she knew everything about me. So then she finally told me that she and her parents were no longer in touch because they had kicked her out of the house when she started college. They had wanted her to drop out and start working so she could contribute to the family, but she wanted to get a degree and they were not happy about it. So they got into a big fight and she left home after they told her that she could get out of their house. She chose to leave, and then with a lot of help from a couple of relatives and a few friends, She was able to gather enough money to pay her tuition, and then that's how she put herself through college. Apparently her parents had always been like that. They were really stingy and not even willing to work hard enough to earn their own money, so they were constantly relying on help from relatives to bail them out. That's why most of their family members did not even like their family, and they had been ostracized for how her parents always tried to manipulate people into giving them money and promised that they would return it, but they never would. They ran a flop makeup and beauty business together, and they had wanted her to join them eventually, but she cut them off instead. She told me that it had been a task for her to even get her relatives to agree because of the kind of reputation that her parents had. But thankfully they pitied her because of how desperate she was and agreed to help her without expecting anything in return. She told me that she owed a lot of money to a lot of people, and that was why she was working so hard so early in life, getting a degree and also making sure that she earned money from a part-time job as well. I thought that it was pretty inspiring and I wanted to help her out. So I told her that I would also start contributing and would help her pay off her debts. As I mentioned above, I come from a very different family compared to hers. My dad is an ophthalmologist and my mom is an entrepreneur. She deals in made jewelry online and it's pretty successful. So I grew up pretty comfortable and money has never been an issue for me. That's not to say that I don't care about money and I just throw it around. I'm not that kind of a person, but I've just never had to struggle with it. That's what I'm trying to say. So when I learned about Zoe's story, I was touched because she had kept it a secret from me for so long because she was afraid that I would think of her as a gold digger like a couple of other people had said when they first found out that she was dating me. After talking to her about it, we decided that I was going to help her out as well so she could pay off her debts faster. I would send her a specific amount of money every month and then she would come to me and tell me that it was really helpful. I never bothered to ask her the details of the transactions because I trusted her and she had never given me any reason not to. I don't think she knew that the money that I was giving her came from my own salary and I was not borrowing anything from my parents, but she did not need to know that, so it was fine at the time. The two of us were living together. She had moved into my apartment and I handled all the bills. I was earning by then, so it was not a problem for me. She had just graduated, so she was still looking for a full-time job, and I did not want her to waste her salary whenever I was perfectly capable of doing it on my own. We were happy together for the 4 years that we had been living together, including the past year after we got married. Her behavior started changing slightly after we got engaged, but it was not obvious for me to actually notice, and once we got engaged, I got very busy at work as well since I had to finish everything up before I left for my honeymoon. I did not have enough time to notice small and insignificant things like Zoe spending a lot of time on her phone, often coming home really late from her job, and how she had almost stopped looking for a full-time job. I wasn't worried about any of those things since she had just graduated. I knew that she would find something to do, and then we got married almost a year ago, which was funded entirely by my parents and me. She did not have much family to speak of, so we could not expect her parents to chip in, and very few guests as well. So we believed that it would be best for us to fund the entire thing. She hadn't even offered to contribute, but I was fine with it. I did not think it was strange because she had already explained her situation to me, so I was fine with it, and even after the wedding, I decided to continue paying all the major bills and stuff, not expecting her to split anything with me at any point. She continued to tell me that she was still looking for something, but none of the jobs that were being offered were suited to her taste and she wanted something a little more challenging. I believed her, and I also knew that she had been working for a really long time, so she deserved some rest, and I did not say anything to her about it. We also stopped at the arrangement where I would send her a certain amount of money every month and she would be offered debts with it, or at least I believed that that's what she was doing with it. Unfortunately, a couple of days ago, I found out that she had been cheating on me with my boss. I wasn't snooping or anything. It had been completely coincidental. She was in the shower and I was sitting in the living room where her laptop was charging. I think she was watching something. I don't remember. But then all of a sudden I saw that she was receiving a voice call on Instagram from an account named Unknown Lover. So my first instinct was obviously to answer the call, and I immediately heard my boss's voice asking her why she had taken so long to answer the call. I hung up immediately and tried to make sense of this. I tried to convince myself that there might be some innocent explanation for this, but then when I opened Instagram on her laptop and then I opened the chats with this account, I realized that they had been having an affair for quite a while, from before we got married. I scrolled back as far as I could, and I'm really lucky that Zoe takes such long showers because it gave me enough time to scroll back and realize that they had actually started flirting around the time that we got engaged. From what I gathered after reading the chats, my boss 32M had tried to hit on her at my engagement party, and she had responded well to it. So after that, he created a burner account to flirt with her, and that's how their affair started. I realized that they had been sleeping together for a really long time, and she had been more verbally affectionate than she had ever been with me because in those messages, she constantly kept telling him that she loved him and she was ready to leave everything for him, including me. It was my boss who was holding out on the relationship because he was also married and even had a child aged around 5 or 6 as well. He had told her to wait and they would get together soon. That's why she was waiting with me. To say that I was devastated would be an understatement, and I started crying as soon as I read those messages. In the meantime, Zoe had come out of the shower, and when she heard me crying, she came to my side to comfort me. But then she saw what I was reading on screen and took a couple of steps back. Instead of trying to deny it or apologizing to me, she just stood there silently while I cried. After a while, I got really frustrated and I asked her what the heck was that, and she told me point blank that she had been waiting for me to find out and had actually been thinking about telling me herself because she didn't want to be with me anymore. She told me that she was exhausted from pretending to love me and confessed that she had actually fallen out of love with me a couple of weeks after we got married. She had realized that my boss was the right man for her. I asked her why she believed that. She told me that it was quite simple for her because she knew that a broke loser like me would never be able to treat her the way that my boss did. She even bragged about how a couple of months ago, she had told me that she was going out for the weekend with her friends and taking a girls' trip, but actually she had been out with my boss and her friends had been covering for her. So that explained all the fancy new gifts that her so-called friends were getting her in all the expensive clothes, bags, makeup, and jewelry that she was sporting all of a sudden. She had been telling me that a friend of hers had come into a lot of money and was treating all of them with these things. But now I know the truth. It was my boss. She said that she was lucky that I had found out on my own, and now she wanted a divorce because she was sick of pretending that she was interested in me. She even said that she would rather be single or be my boss's mistress than be my wife anymore, and this marriage was over. Before I could even process what was going on, she started packing her things. I did not beg her to stay. I had more pride than that, and I was hurting. My heart was broken, and I knew that I had to let her go. She hadn't even tried to deny anything or even apologize to me for what she had done. In fact, she seemed pretty happy to be going. She was about to grab her laptop and leave, but I told her that anything that I had bought for her was nothing. It was my money and not hers. She made a face when I told her that, but didn't try to argue and left the laptop at my house. Everything else that I had bought her remained with me, but honestly the laptop was more important for me, and I actually had a plan in my mind. I needed that as proof of the divorce because I was not going to let her off easily, and I was also not going to forgive my boss for this because even though we had a good working relationship, he had no right to hit on my wife and then do such nasty crap to me. And the fact that even after he had been hooking up with my wife, he had the audacity to face me in the office and act all nice to me to my face is what pissed me off the most. I was his guy for everything, and knowing that I had let him count on me but he was screwing me behind my back was what really pushed me to the edge. I had done a lot of things for him, going beyond the scope of what was required of me in my job description, and I had always tried to be a great employee. But that day I made up my mind that I was going to make sure that this guy paid the price for what he had done to me. I knew a lot of the shady stuff that he had been up to recently. He had failed his drug test that had been conducted company-wide, and I knew exactly where those documents were. I knew he was caught up in a lot of shady and illegal stuff, and if I exposed him for one thing, all his other secrets would come out eventually on their own. He was in cahoots with the team that had conducted the drug tests and had them print a completely different result, one that wouldn't expose him. He had bribed the head of the medical team and had paid him half the money that he had been offering him in advance before the test. But after getting the results that he wanted, my boss had decided to go back on his word and told the other guy that he was not going to pay him the rest of the amount. So they were having a little bit of a tiff. I was the only person who knew about it because my boss had told me that he trusted me and wanted me to speak to the other guy and deal with this. The head of the team had actually sent us the real results of the test to threaten my boss and show him that he was serious, that if he did not get the rest of the money that he had been promised, he would make it known to everybody that my boss had a problem. My boss had received the real test results just a couple of days before I found out about Zoe, and we had been discussing it in his office. He had been really freaked out by it, and I remember where he had kept those papers as well. So the day that I found out about him and Zoe, I made up my mind that I was going to expose him. The next morning, I got up extra early and made my way to the office. I had a spare set of keys for everything since my boss would often make me run errands and make me come in early for that. I even had a spare set of keys for his office, so getting in there was not any trouble for me. Once I was in, I grabbed the actual test results from his desk drawers and headed to the police station. There I explained the entire situation to the cops and left them to deal with it. After that, I decided that whatever happened to my boss was not my problem. He got arrested obviously, since the traces of the drugs that had been found in his bloodstream were not exactly legal. Not only him, but also the medical team that was in charge of the drug tests are under investigation now. So basically everybody is in a lot of trouble right now, and it's all because of me. I'm not even bothering to hide it. I've told the cops in charge of the case that I'll be here if they need any help, and I have also quit my job because I don't want to be caught up with anything else there. My boss is under investigation right now, and I don't know if he's going to be charged or not, but I am really satisfied with the fact that I got him into trouble and he has been suspended for now. But if the claims that I have made turn out to be true, he's going to be fired and then he's going to jail. The only person who is upset about this is obviously Zoe, since she has been calling me for the last couple of days ever since the news about my boss got out, accusing me of ruining her and her boyfriend's life. She keeps telling me that doing this to my boss just because I'm mad about the affair is simply not all right, and she's really disappointed. She thinks that what I did was very extreme and unfair because it did not come from a place of righteousness but from a place of revenge, and that's never okay. So, IDA for reporting my boss to the police for drug usage when I found out he was hooking up with my wife? Update 1. 1 week has passed since my post here, and I have filed for divorce. I did it before Zoe, and speaking of her, I have blocked her everywhere. I realized what a snake she was, and I have stopped second-guessing myself. I did the right thing. There are no two ways about it. It doesn't even matter what my intention really was, since I reported somebody who was doing something illegal. My boss is not even a good guy, so I don't have to feel guilty about what I'm doing. Had he been a genuinely nice person with a drug problem, I might have thought twice before putting him through this. But as we all know, that's not what has happened. I feel disgusted that I let Zoe live with me and did so much for her for so long. More than anything else, I feel like a total idiot for being in love with her. A lot of you have asked me if there were really no signs, and I'm sorry, but I have to tell you guys that I don't think anybody else in my place would have ever been able to guess at the reality of the situation either. She had been acting perfectly normally with me even after the affair started in earnest. I don't think I would have ever been able to know that she was cheating on me if I had not found out about it the way that I did. So there were no signs, and even if there were, I never would have believed that she was on me because of everything that I have done for her. I did it out of love. I never thought that she was actually using me. I have even begun to doubt her entire story about her not being in touch with her parents because she wanted to get a degree and they wanted her to work. I don't think that's true anymore, and I also don't think that she was using my money to pay off her debts because there were never any updates on that end. Like a fool, I never bothered to ask either because I trusted her blindly, and I realized now that I shouldn't have done that. It was a huge mistake. Looking back, I realized that I was very idiotic about certain things. I trusted her more than she deserved. But no worries now that the divorce is happening. I'm gonna get her back. Update 2. So 3 days ago, Zoe was served with the divorce papers, and today we got a response from her. She's not contesting the divorce, but she does not agree with the terms of the petition and wants to negotiate. I'm all right with that. She can bring it on. She is demanding that she get to keep the house, a massive settlement amount, and alimony on top of that. I must say her claims are pretty bold. What she has done to me, I don't think anybody who was a known cheater would bother to come up with such an elaborate petition to keep everything for themselves and make it so obvious that they are nothing but a gold digger. It's very bad now that she is after my money. There is nothing more that she wants. I don't even think that she cares about my boss that much now. He's not in a position to support her financially. She is cold and calculated, and I am glad that I'm getting to see the side of her so that it destroys any feelings of love or affection that I still have somewhere within me. I won't lie, I am really disappointed about the way she has turned out to be, but I know that I'm going to destroy her in court, so it doesn't matter. I can feel disappointment and process my emotions, but first I have to win this thing. We are meeting with a court-appointed mediator in a couple of days. We'll see how it goes. I also finally found the courage to talk to my parents about this. I had been hiding it from them because I was really ashamed and embarrassed by what was going on. But I realized that this was huge and I needed to talk to them, and I'm glad that I did because they were pretty supportive of me and told me that they were willing to help me out in whichever way that I needed, financially or emotionally, and I think I will need to rely on them for money for quite some time since I have quit my job, and I am currently in the process of looking for another. With all my bills, rent, and now the fee of my lawyer, everything is going to be really expensive for me and I'll have to dip into my savings. I don't know when I'll find a new job since I'm still embroiled in the drug controversy with my boss, and he is under trial right now, so I don't think any company will be willing to take me on at the moment. I am acting as a witness against him, and it has been really emotionally draining to do that. But I know that what I'm doing is the right thing to do, and that's what is keeping me going. But honestly speaking, worst comes to worst, I'll just start working for my dad. At least with him, I know for a fact that my boss will never try to screw me over. Update 3. So the negotiations have started. It has been 1.5 weeks since I received the response to my divorce petition. The trial of my boss is still ongoing, so no updates on that. But then negotiations with my soon-to-be ex-wife are not going that well in the sense that she is being really demanding and is straight up lying through her teeth during these meetings, trying to make me look like the bad guy and villainizing me to justify her claims. She's acting like the victim in the situation, and it's severely annoying me. She shows up to these meetings looking like a widow, like she has been through so much. I can see right through her little act, and it's disgusting. I know what she's trying to do, and it might sway the mediator, but it's not going to work on me or my lawyer. We are not backing down from our claims. We are definitely going to get what we rightfully deserve. There is no way on earth that I'm letting her walk away with the kind of settlement that she is demanding in alimony. I don't even know why she thinks she's entitled to it just because she's unemployed right now. I mean, she literally cheated on me. I think that pretty much disqualifies her from anyway, and I have the proof for it. I have the laptop containing all the text and stuff. She hasn't bothered to log out of her account, and it doesn't matter anyway, even if she does now, since I have screenshots of the entire thing of all her chats and I have produced them during these meetings. But she claims that she had apparently been forced to look for love outside of our marriage because I used to treat her so badly. She is claiming that I used to make her do all the work around the house. I forced her to quit her job, and I promised her that I would take care of her. But now I'm refuting those things that I had said, and I'm going back on my word. None of that is true. We all know it, and it just boils my blood every time she starts saying things like that. I have to use all the power in my body to restrain myself from just walking out of those meetings. My lawyer has advised me that I keep my cool, but it's really difficult to do so given the circumstances. I'm really frustrated. I won't lie, I feel like things are getting really difficult for me right now. I'm finding it harder and harder every single meeting to keep my head cool, but I know that I have to get through it. I just hope that things come to an end soon. I still have had no luck on the job front, so that's another disappointment that I have to deal with. With the news about me exposing my boss has been doing the rounds, and that sort of negative reputation in our industry, or any industry for that matter, it's not conducive for employers to hire me. So it feels like I might actually have to start working for my dad. Nothing wrong with that. I just hope that maybe I might be able to make a way, for clearly it's going to be very difficult now that I have picked a fight with the wrong people. Update 4. Hey, so it has been 2 months since I filed for a divorce, and today I'm not going to talk about that. But I'm here to tell you guys that my boss is going to jail. I'm not sure for how long, I think it might be 2 or 3 years, but he might get out earlier for good behavior. Anyway, the point is that he is in jail right now. The only person I feel bad for in this situation is his wife. I know for a fact that she is a stay-at-home mom and is completely reliant on his salary for everything. So now that he is not going to be earning, life is going to get pretty difficult for her. I feel bad for her and the child, obviously. They deserve better than this, but unfortunately this is how it is for them right now. As for me, I have started working for my dad. Surprise. My dad thankfully was really nice about this and did not for once make me feel weird about it, and the divorce proceedings are still going on. We still haven't been able to come to a conclusion about the settlement and all of that, so negotiations are still ongoing, but I'm trying not to let her get under my skin anymore. It's much easier now that I don't like her at all. Update 5. Hi, so it's been almost 6 months since my last update. I got really busy after that since I was working for my father and I forgot to update you guys. Anyway, a couple of months ago, my divorce finally came through. Zoe had to agree to my terms of the petition because it was the best route for her since the mediator made it clear that if we were not able to come to one decision then this would go to court and it would be much more difficult for us there. He said to both of us, but I knew that he was actually talking about Zoe because he had been able to see right through her bluff and she had been able to lie during our negotiation sessions, but she wouldn't be able to do that in family court. There would be really bad consequences of that. So long story short, she had no other option and she had to concede. Now she and I are divorced and we have no contact with each other. I like it better this way, to be honest. I am going to therapy trying to work on myself. It's going to be a long road while I'm trying to get there, but I know I'll get there eventually. I have wonderful friends and really supportive parents. I'll keep them close and get through this. Now on to the next story. Story 7. My husband is cheating on me with my best friend. I'm honestly not sure where to start, so I guess I'll just start. My husband and I have been dating since I was 19 and he was 22. We've been married for 6 years now. We have 2 kids and I'm 6 months pregnant with our third. 2 years ago, I found out my dad has stage 3 colon cancer. My dad is my only parent as my mom passed away when I was 12. He's my favorite human in life. Without him, life doesn't seem as colorful. His laugh is contagious and he gives these big bear hugs that seem to make all of your broken pieces feel like they're perfectly in place again. Whenever I've had a hard day, he doesn't poke and prod, and just lets me vent and listens. About 5 months ago, we discovered the treatments aren't working for him, and in a direct quote from the doctor, he said, "Months, not years." Since then, he's gotten progressively worse and now is losing memory. He looked at the dog he got for me on my 21st birthday and said, "Wow, that's a nice dog. Where'd you get it?" My husband has been my absolute rock. He has been there for me, holding my hand and helping me through this. He's been so loving and attentive to both my kids and I. Don't get me wrong, I am a mother first, always. I don't allow myself to wallow. My kids are still loved, cared for, played with, and I haven't let my load slack around the house once my dad got his updated prognosis. My husband encouraged me to quit my job. About a month later, we discovered we were pregnant again, and I still hadn't let go of my job. I kept holding out for some reason. After finding out I was pregnant again, he assured me it was still okay to quit my job, that honestly it would save us a small fortune on daycare costs anyways, so I did. Quit my job. My best friend and I have been friends since diapers. Her family is like my family and vice versa. My mom and her mom grew up together. We've always been solid, and right after my dad's appointment when we found out he had so little time left, I drove straight to her house and she held me while I cried for hours. If there are soulmates in friend form, she was mine. Thick as thieves is what my mom used to say. This morning as I was up with my 3-year-old, he's sick. My husband's work alarm was going off. He has a few sets, so I turned one off and gently woke him up. He said he was up late working, so he took the morning off, rolled over and went back to sleep. As I went to turn off the remainder of his alarms, I saw a text from my friend on his lock screen that said, "I'm assuming since there hasn't been an angry pregnant lady on my doorstep, you haven't told her about us yet." Time froze in that moment. I took his phone and walked away and just read their conversations. For months, this man has been fing my best friend. For months, these people have been lying to my face. And I know what you're going to say. You should have seen the warning signs. But I've been clutching this phone in my hand for 2 hours and nothing. He has been so loving and attentive to me, but he always has been so kind and gentle. There have been no late-night work nights except for once in a blue moon. There's been no lingering touches between them or even glances. They act as they have since the day I first introduced them. How sick is it that she calls him her brother, but she screws him. I know so many people get a moment of clarity in situations like this, but I have none. Aside from being sad about my dad, I haven't changed. I'm still a loving wife and mother. I still doted on him and my children. I talk to him about how he is doing and how was his day every freaking day. I haven't allowed the ground to swallow me whole. I know what I have to do now, but I just don't want to. I'm about to lose my family and my support system in one blow. I'll confront him tomorrow. Today I just need this last 24 hours of peace. As for her, I won't give her the satisfaction of a response. I don't care why she did it. She did it and it's done. I was always the friend who cleaned up her messes. After today, I will cut her out of my life like she never mattered at all. This has to be the hardest storm I'll ever weather. But damn it, I know I'll sail through it if not for me, for my children. Update 1. My husband is cheating on me with my best friend. Hello everyone. I'm here with a much-awaited update. For my typing sake, I'm going to give everyone fake names so for context. Mill and Phil equals Ruth and Joe. Ex-BFF parents equals Angie and Bob. Ex-BFF equals Jess. Soon-to-be ex equals Tyler. Ex-BFF's brother equals Jake. And I'll just refer to my dad as Dad. I have a few things I want to get through, so I'll just summarize as best as I can, and if you have any questions, I'll answer in the comments. To get this out of the way, because to me it feels important, yesterday I scheduled a same-day appointment with my OBGYN and got tested for just about every STD out there. I got the results for most back and they were all negative. There's a few that take up to 2 weeks to get the results back for, so I'll be waiting on those. When I met with my lawyer, I brought everything on my end financially wise, including the wills from both my dad and my mom, and I managed to get my hands on his financial documents. He stores his in his office in a locked box. I also brought over everything we had set up financially for my children. While I'm not totally sure if it's everything, I am pretty confident I got most of it. My lawyer was happy I managed to get my hands on that much. Ruth even handed over her will to me from both her and Bob to ensure I was taken care of in the divorce. My lawyer understands I'm wanting a divorce immediately. However, she wants to make sure she is thorough and isn't missing any key info, so hopefully I'll have actual divorce papers to give him in about 30 days. I'm not rushing her though. I'm letting the professional do her job. Now for the sit down. I asked Angie and Ruth to describe everything in detail on what happened. Angie, the revenge seeker that she is, forced them to sit through a slideshow she put together of all of the texts. I know a lot of you were concerned about one of them telling them sooner than later, but they were so secretive they didn't even tell their significant others about what was happening. Once the slideshow ended, Tyler tried lunging for Jess and Joe actually had to force him to sit down. Tyler was shouting profanities at Jess and telling her she will regret this. Jess started crying and begging her parents for forgiveness. Bob looked his daughter in the eye and told her he will never forgive her for this. Blood or not, she is no daughter of his. He didn't raise his daughter to be this person. Jess was always a daddy's girl, so I think that cut her pretty deep. Jess is in the middle of a divorce herself, and her parents were giving her money for her lawyer, and they told her she is cut off from them both financially and physically. Tyler's dad was irate. According to Ruth, he looked like he was holding back on throttling him. From there, Tyler went straight home. I know because we have a Ring doorbell camera along with a few cameras in the house for our kids to keep an eye on them when we aren't right next to them. Tyler came home and saw that most of mine and the kid stuff was gone and he lost it, started yelling and throwing things. The house is now trashed with a few holes in the walls for decoration. When he didn't find us there, he went to my dad's. While I did spend most of the day, he was at work packing and moving things into my dad's house. We were already at his cabin. Tyler took a baseball bat to my dad's door, trying and failing to break it down. My dad's neighbor actually called the cops on him and he was arrested. His parents refused to bail him out. I had an appointment with my therapist today. I've had one for a year now since I was struggling with my dad, and it felt good to just cry it out and let everything out about how I was feeling. It was very helpful and she gave me a few tools to work through my emotions with this one. I felt very grounded and empowered leaving my session today. I'm also planning on setting up my children with a therapist when we get back from the cabin to figure out the best way to deal with telling them. I know people said I shouldn't, but I will be telling them just in an age-appropriate way. I don't want there to be secrets and lies between us. I've always been as open and honest as I can with them. Again, in the most kid-appropriate way. Just because they're small humans, they're still humans and still deserve the truth. I had a handful of comments telling me I should stay. Every man cheats. I should work things out because most of our marriage was good. I refused to believe all men cheat. My parents were married for 20 years and after my mom passed, my dad never moved on. I watched my dad love my mom for 12 of those years and cherish her. I will not accept anything less than that kind of love. He never cheated, nor did she. While I'm not sure when I'll be ready to move on, Falling in love is the absolute last thing on my mind at the moment. I refuse to let Tyler win and destroy love for me completely. I will move on from this. Jess started blowing up my phone, demanding I fix the situation and immediately blaming me. My lawyer told me to not block texts just in case they spill out any additional info I was missing. She was playing the poor me card very hard. The thing is, though, I never influenced Angie and Bob to cut contact with their daughter. They made that choice on their own. She actually started blaming me for stealing the love of her life. I introduced them when Tyler and I started dating, so not sure where that came from, and that Tyler is only with me for the kids. Honestly, I knew she was just trying to hurt me at that point. I didn't give her the satisfaction of responding, though. Between her and Tyler, I have about 200 missed calls. Tyler went from begging and pleading me to forgive him. Like I said, I didn't have divorce papers to hand him, so he's stuck in this unknown gray area. I also asked Angie and Ruth to not say anything about the divorce to him yet, purely just for my satisfaction. Honestly, I know it's slightly petty, but keeping him in that gray area of not knowing is my small revenge to him. To threatening to call the cops on me for kidnapping, telling me Jess wasn't the only one. Bingo. Just what I was looking for. To telling me I'm a stuck-up, to threatening me, to back to begging me for forgiveness. Honestly, it was just a whiplash reading those texts. I'd be lying in saying if those texts didn't hurt me and terrify me all at once. But I refused to let them break me. As for both of them together, I don't think he is going to stay with her. I think he blames her for blowing up our marriage. Honestly, who knows though, they deserve each other. I was initially okay to do a 50-50 split with Tyler for custody, but after his reaction, I don't feel comfortable with that, so I'll likely be going for full custody. Jake has about 30 days of leave he's saved up, and he's going to be using them to help the kids, and I get settled at my dad's house, and honestly to be there in case Tyler tries showing up going crazy again. He's been such a big help to the kids and I lately, and I'm forever in his debt for this. Last night after the kids went to bed, he hooked up his Xbox and we played a game called Diablo 4 together to help me take my mind off of things. It was fun. However, he did sort of confess that he's always had feelings for me somewhere in the midst of things, but also told me to not say or do anything back. He understands a relationship or anything like that isn't on my mind and won't be for a while. He isn't wrong, but just that he's felt that way since we were teenagers and just wanted to get it off his chest. Thank you again, seriously. Your comments, your support, your messages, all of it has been one giant breath of fresh air. Just knowing I have a whole online community willing to go to bat for me has kept me treading water these last couple days. Your comments have popped in my head when I felt like just giving up on leaving him because it's so hard, and gave me so many great points and helpful advice. I know I deserve more and I can't accept his actions, and to the people who commented relating to my situation, my heart goes out to you all. This pain is awful and I hate that so many of you can relate, but your stories have resonated deep within me. You all keep commending me for my strength, and my personal favorite is telling me how proud of me you are. Every time I see those words, I start to tear up. I'm blaming the pregnancy hormones, but your words have helped put me at ease, so that way I could do what I knew I needed to do. So I'll leave this here for now. If anything of importance happens when I go back home, I'll update further. Thank you all, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Update 2 1 month later. Hey everyone. I'm still getting daily messages and comments for an update, so here is what could possibly be my final one. My dad passed away about a week after my last update. I knew it was coming, but it still feels like a gut punch. Thank you for everyone who kept him in your thoughts, truly. My marriage has officially ended. Once Tyler, I believe that's the fake name I assigned to him. Please don't call me out if it's not. It's been a while. Discovered just how serious I was about leaving him. He became compliant and was willing to give me everything I asked for in the divorce, so my lawyer opted for a dissolution versus divorce. The process is a lot quicker and went smoothly. As of right now, I have full custody while he works out his anger management and whatnot with therapy. I'm not sure if I'll ever trust him again with the kids, but I'm also in therapy as well for my kids. I'm not making any decisions at all right now when it comes to that. He gets supervised visits at a facility where there is an army of staff and security, and someone is there at all times. That's once a week, and he does get video calls twice a week. The kids are adjusting pretty well. There are days when I think it affects them more, but they've suffered some big losses, so it's to be expected. I did decide to give the baby my dad's first name though. It just felt right. But baby is doing so very well and is thriving despite the amount of stress I've had going on. I'm managing as best as I can with everything going on. I miss my dad like crazy, and I'm still trying to figure out how to exist in a world where he doesn't. The grief still is so very heavy. I'm still mourning my marriage as well. I don't regret leaving him, but it still hurts me deeply. However, I'm picking up the pieces and making my life whole without him. My mill, well, ex-mill now, I guess, I don't know, still feels weird, and Angie helped me out so much. They've really allowed me to lean on them in these moments, whether it be taking the kids for a little while or cooking dinner for us when I don't have the energy. I truly am so lucky to have them. And finally, to what you all have been waiting to hear about Jake. Jake is now back in California. He tried extending his leave, but the military said no. It was truly wonderful having him there and helping me in the first few days after my dad's passing. He picked up so much slack for me that I will truly never be able to repay him for it. He is so patient and kind. That being said, nothing has happened between us, though he did hold me while I broke down after the kids went to bed quite a few times. But that's the extent of it. No kissing or anything like that. He does call me and text me multiple times a day. Right now, I just don't have any room in my life for romance. I have so much grief, and the weight of being a single mom has been heavy. He hasn't pushed me on it either. He let me know that he meant every word he said and that he's willing to just be my friend until I decide I want more, if I ever decide I want more with him. I wish I could be the girl that jumps in with both feet, but the betrayal from my ex is still fresh, and I'm worried I would burn anything out before it started, so I asked for friends and time to process everything else in my life before I even consider processing a new relationship. He happily agreed. Oh, and Tyler and Jess are not a couple. Most of you were right. He left her high and dry, though I don't wish misery on anyone. I'd be lying if I didn't say I get the smallest amount of satisfaction that her life went up in smoke. She's been blacklisted from her family, and I know a lot of you said it's weird that her parents did that. But if you guys knew just how deep my bond went with that family, it wouldn't seem weird at all. Angie is like my surrogate mom. She gave me the safe sex talk, the period talk. She listened to me cry about the boys who broke my heart. She held my hand while I delivered my kids. When she talks about me, she calls me her daughter. She knew my mom for practically her whole life. She held my mom's hand when she delivered me, and if anything had happened to both of my parents, she is who I would have gone to live with. My parents had that in their will. So with all of that being said, please just be kind to me in the comments. I put this off for a few days because of how hostile some people were, and the prospect of being called a liar doesn't sound too appealing at the moment. Again, I can't thank you for the amount of light and love I've received from you. I promise I read every comment and message. I just haven't had the capacity to respond. You have really helped brighten my days with all of your words of encouragement. I appreciate you all. I am so lucky to have an army of internet friends. You guys are the best, love. This is it for now. I probably won't post anything else for a while. I'm still trying to find my footing, and I'm trying to get settled in a new routine before I bring a brand new baby in the world. I may come back to this, but I may not, though I do promise I'll update if anything happens with Jake and LOL. I know so many of you became invested. P.S. Please excuse any typos. Pregnancy insomnia is kicking my ass right now. Answers to a few common questions and a small update. Hey everyone. I can't believe it's been almost 2 months since I last updated you all. I've missed chatting, but life has been keeping me very busy. Does Tyler's parents still talk to him? No, my mill cut him off almost instantly and went no contact. Phil is very low contact and only speaking with him when he takes the kids to their supervised visits to see him. Did Tyler cheat on you with more than just Jess? To my knowledge, there was only one other girl, which if you click on my comments and scroll a little you'll see me briefly explain the situation. If there are any more than that, it's not to my knowledge, and I honestly think I'd prefer to not know. Aren't you concerned about Jake and Jess being in contact with one another still? They are siblings after all. Jake and Jess never had a good relationship. They were very, very low contact before any of this came out. They never got along as kids, and the relationship never changed as they got older. Looking back on it, it was a major red flag how she treated him. They only ever spoke as adults as family functions, and even that was brief and only surface-level conversations. What all are you telling your children? You should let them process how they need to. The only one who is old enough to semi-understand what's happening is my oldest. I sat both of them down and simply said, "Mommy and Daddy aren't together anymore. Daddy did some things that I wasn't okay with. That means Daddy won't live with us anymore. But you can still see him, spend time with him, and love him with all of your heart. It might be a little confusing and that's okay, but it's important to know that we both love you guys so much and that will never change." Then asked if they wanted to talk about it at all or if they had any questions about the situation. My oldest had a few and I answered in an honest but age-appropriate and gentle manner. They are still in therapy. They come to me if they want to talk about it, but if not, I don't push it on them. My goal in this has never been to weaponize and poison the kids against him, and it's something I will never do. He's their dad, and I refuse to traumatize them any more than they have been. Do you have a Venmo registry, P.O. box, etc.? I am warmed by your thoughtfulness and kindness. However, I cannot accept any of it. You are truly beautiful humans for being so willing to help me. However, I ask that you give those donations to your local shelters. I have a rather large inheritance and an amazing support system, but if I wasn't so fortunate, I could have very well been one of the girls who had to take refuge at a shelter. I've been making donations to shelters near me and my kids, and I've been volunteering at a few. Now on to the update. So if you read any of my previous comments, you know that baby boy is here. He's honestly been the calmest newborn that I've ever managed. Hardly cries, is very content and happy all the time. He's been reaching all of his milestone markers, even hitting the ones that aren't on the preemie scale. It's been such a relief and a blessing. The older two completely adore him and are of course eating up the extra attention they get from their grandparents. Yes, Angie and her husband are called Grandma and Grandpa as well. When I went into labor, I had told Tyler that I was in labor, but I didn't want him at the hospital. It is his kid, so I was being courteous. He blew up on me for taking away his right to see his child be brought into the world. I simply turned off my phone to relax and de-stress. He actually showed up at the hospital and had to be escorted off the property by security, not for being violent or anything. He just wouldn't leave after I had told the nurses I delivered at the hospital I work at, I'm an RN. I didn't want him around after that. He hasn't been to a single visit to see the kids. I initially sent him pictures of the baby and updates, but he never responded and eventually blocked my number. After roughly a month, I asked my Phil to reach out to him since no one had heard from him. My Phil actually showed up at Tyler's house to do a well check since I was concerned something was wrong, even though I don't love him anymore. There is a piece of me that will always care for him as the father of my children. Turns out he has a new girlfriend and just isn't interested in being a dad anymore. He actually even denied paternity, even though he's the only person I've ever been with physically. The kids are honestly and surprisingly okay with him not really being around. No, I didn't feel it necessary to tell them the harsh things he said. Jake has been completely amazing. He had my favorite food delivered to me at the hospital post-birth, FaceTiming me and texting me regularly, chatting it up with the kids, hasn't been pushy on me at all, has let me set the pace completely, hasn't crossed any of my boundaries in the slightest. He actually booked me a surprise postnatal massage and arranged all of it, including childcare. It was the most relaxed I felt in months. He sends little gifts and food to the house occasionally, especially on my hard days. Jake has truly been a breath of fresh air. He comes home in just over 3 months, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't excited. As for me, I've still been regularly attending therapy. It's really helped me cope and just in general become a better person and mother. I'm still devastated by my dad's passing, and grief really loves to put a chokehold on me when I least expect it. Sometimes I just go sit in his office where it smells the most like him and cry. I was very blessed to have such a loving and amazing dad. Angie and Mill have truly been angels on earth. I cannot express how beyond lucky I am to have this amazing support system. Even Phil/Angie's husband have been insanely supportive and kind. I would be lost without their unconditional love and support. As crazy as it sounds, I'm honestly unbothered by the divorce and Tyler not being around anymore. I think I'm more relieved than anything. My heart aches for my children, but I don't think I truly realized how long I was holding my breath and walking on eggshells in that marriage until I was in a space where I didn't have to anymore. My therapist and I really dug deep and took off the rose-colored glasses. In a weird yet awful way, I'm almost thankful I caught him cheating. I think that's why I was so calm and methodical during the leaving him phase. I go back to work next week. I think I'm ready to find my new normal and get back into a routine. While my heart aches my dad isn't around to see it, I'm ready to unlock this next chapter of my life. Cheers to the chapter of healing, self-love, new beginnings, and finding peace within the chaos. Thank you for going through this journey with me, supporting me, sharing your stories with me, and just being here. Love you all, internet friends. I hope you have an amazing day. I'll update again when I can. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Refused to give my wedding jewelry to my stepdaughter for her wedding. So my husband excoriated me for ruining her wedding and demanded I put his daughter before my own. Hi, so I am 46F and 3 years ago, I got married to my husband Hank, 48M. Hank is my second husband. My first husband unfortunately passed away 12 years ago. He was a wonderful man and my childhood sweetheart. We started dating when we were in middle school before we even knew what our relationship was supposed to be like. But before we knew it, we were getting married because it was the only thing that we had ever wanted. He and I were soulmates, and he will always be my first love. Nothing will ever change that. We also have a daughter together, Annie, 24F, and she has been my biggest source of love and support after my husband passed away. He was diagnosed with lung cancer when Annie was 8 years old, and after a really long and hard battle with his disease, he finally succumbed, and I was actually happy to let him go. It hurt that he had to go so soon, but I was relieved that he was no longer in pain anymore. I still miss him occasionally, but life has been kind to me, and I can't complain about anything because I really think that life has always found a way. After her father's passing, Annie and I were there for each other. We helped each other grieve, and her presence comforted me in a way that nothing else could. Honestly, in a lot of ways, she was exactly like her father, and I guess I found comfort in the fact that in one way or the other he would always be around. I can't even talk about this without tearing up a little, so I'll move on to something a little less emotional. Coming to my husband Hank, we met at a friend's party a couple of years ago. He was the one who approached me, and we hit it off instantly. We kept chatting throughout the duration of the party, and we discovered that he and I get along like a house on fire. At the end of the party, we exchanged numbers and we stayed in touch. We started texting, and he was flirting with me like nobody's business. Within a couple of weeks, he had asked me out and I said yes. I had gone out with a couple of men after my husband had passed away, but I never really felt anything for them. It was only because everybody in my family insisted that I try to move on because Annie had grown up and she had her own life now. I didn't have an issue with that, and I was glad that Annie had moved out and was making a life of her own, but I also didn't have a problem with being by myself and living alone. I guess my family was just trying to look out for me, and that is why they kept setting me up on dates. Unfortunately, I was never able to connect with any of the men as I had connected with my husband, and he had set the bar really high for me. So, I did go out on dates and had a couple of flings here and there, but it never went past that or became anything serious. However, with Hank, it was not like that. Right from the first date, he had made it very clear to me that he wanted something serious. We were both in our 40s and had been married before with kids, but the kids were grown up and our partners were no longer in our lives. My husband had passed away, but his ex-wife had cheated on him and left him when his daughter Fran, 26F, was 13. He had a younger son as well, and the divorce had been really tough on their family, but they had gone through it somehow. He had stayed away from serious relationships for a long time after that because he wanted to fully devote himself to being a good father, because he was the only parent that his kids had since their mother had given up her parental rights. But now both his kids were adults, and he was ready to settle down and live for himself. I appreciated his honesty on the first date, and I guess that's what really drew me to him. He was honest, easygoing, and really funny. He was very different from my late husband, but I liked him, and for the first time after my husband passed away, I felt like I could connect with a man again. I had fallen head over heels in love with him within a year, and he moved in with me soon after. I confessed after dating for a couple of years, maybe 2 years, he and I got married 3 years ago. It's been smooth sailing since then, and I've had no complaints. He's a great guy, and I love him. He also respects the fact that I have been married before, and unlike him, I never fell out of love with my late husband, but we just had to part ways because of unforeseen circumstances. He never had an issue with me speaking fondly about my memories with my late husband and would even be interested when I would talk about him, which I thought was really nice of him. He never made it a big deal or made me feel awkward or uncomfortable about it, which a couple of men before him had done, and I really appreciated that about him. Overall, he was just a really stand-up guy, and I was happy with him. Only recently did we hit a snag, and I've been having problems ever since then because of an incident that happened with Fran, and we haven't even been speaking to each other after our last fight because it was just that bad. And things have never been like this before, so I don't know what to do now. It all started a couple of weeks ago when Fran announced that she and her boyfriend were engaged. I was really happy for her because I knew that Fran and her boyfriend had been together for a long time. I think they had been together since high school, and I thought that it was really cute. I had even mentioned that it reminded me of myself and had congratulated them and even gave them some lovely gifts at their engagement party. Fran and I have always had a civil and formal relationship. I would not say that we are close because I met her when she was an adult already, so of course we don't have the typical stepmom and stepdaughter relationship. We are not close friends because of the age gap and also because I think Fran is quite closed off personally. She never opened up to me, and even though she was always nice to me, we were never really able to connect on a personal level, but I don't mind it. Some people are just naturally quiet and shy, and it takes them a while to open up. I was hopeful that a couple of years later she would treat me like family. It hasn't happened yet, but I was awful, but now I'm quite doubtful that it might change in the future because of what is happening right now. So, a couple of days after the engagement party, Fran came to visit me on the weekend. I was at home, but Hank was out with a couple of his friends. Usually, whenever Fran visits us, it is to talk to her dad, so when she called me the day to ask if I was at home, I told her that her dad was out, but she told me that it was fine because I was the one that she wanted to talk to. Instantly, I knew that there was something weird going on. Whenever Fran and I had been left alone in a room before this, there had always been an awkward silence until Hank came back. She never had anything to say to me, and even if I tried to make conversation with her, it would lead nowhere. She never seemed to be very talkative around me, so that day when she said that she wanted to talk to me, I could tell that something was off about this, but I still invited her to come over because I thought that she was going to try and build a relationship with me or something, and I wanted to be open to it because even though we are not close, I happen to quite really like Fran as a person, and I would have loved to get to know her better. So, I invited her over, and strangely enough, she was acting like a totally different person that day. It was really off-putting, but I didn't address it. She hugged me and was very sweet when she showed up at my house. For the record, Fran barely ever even hugs her own father because she doesn't really enjoy hugs, so that was extremely weird, but I didn't say anything about it and we sat down on the couch and made small talk for a while. She kept asking me questions about my life and seemed very interested in my late husband and our marriage. She also kept asking me questions about my wedding and stuff, and I won't lie, I thought that we were making progress in becoming friends. She seemed genuinely interested, and so I kept talking to her, and after about an hour, she finally stopped beating around the bush and came to the point. She told me she was actually here to ask me for something, so I told her to go ahead, expecting it to be something small, but instead, she told me that she was actually here to ask me if she could use my wedding jewelry on her big day. Now, I wouldn't have had a problem with it under other circumstances, but my wedding jewelry is personal to me, and I had been hoping that my daughter would be the first to wear it for her wedding day or whatever occasion she wanted to wear it on after me. I had wanted Annie to be the first to have my jewelry, and I didn't want it to be any other way, so I had to let Fran down and tell her that I couldn't let her have that. I tried to be as gentle and polite as possible, but at the end of the day, it's never easy to decline something like that. I felt really bad about it, and the way that she reacted made me feel even more guilty. She made a really sad face and told me that she had been wanting to ask me about this for a really long time ever since I mentioned how I reminded her of myself at the engagement party. She told me that she had seen a couple of my old wedding photos around the house, and she had loved the jewelry that I was wearing in it, and that comment that I had made is what gave her the idea. It was really heartwarming, and I almost agreed, but then I couldn't do that to Annie. She herself wouldn't mind it, but it was just not all right with me. I had been waiting for a long time to see my daughter in that jewelry, and I don't know, it would just feel really weird and off to see Fran sporting those jewels before Annie. It didn't mean that I like Fran any less, but like I said already, my wedding jewelry is very close to my heart, and for sentimental reasons, I could not let Fran have them. So, after that discussion, I had nothing more to say to her, and she left. I could tell that she was very disappointed because this did not play out the way that she had expected it to, but there was not much that I could do. Of course, I felt guilty about it, and I still kind of do, which is probably why I am even here right now. But then again, of course, I love my own daughter more than Fran, and I really don't think that I was in the wrong here. What I didn't expect was the kind of backlash that I have been receiving ever since then. After Fran left, I didn't think much of that interaction, and I certainly didn't expect it to blow out of proportion like this, but I guess she told Hank, and he decided to take things into his own hands and try to convince me to let her have the wedding jewelry. He came back home a couple of hours after Fran had left and immediately confronted me about the conversation that we had. I was very clear-cut with him, and I told him that I would prefer for Annie to wear that jewelry before anybody else, and I didn't think that there was anything wrong with it, but he told me that Annie was still young and it could be years before she got married. I told him that that was not the issue. She could wear my jewelry for whichever occasion she deemed fit, and I would be okay with it. It didn't have to be a wedding, but it had to be Annie first, and that was a non-negotiable for me. I put my foot down because of the way that Hank had confronted me that day. I knew for a fact that he had every intention of turning this into a fight, and that's exactly what happened. When I told him that I would not allow Fran to borrow my wedding jewelry, he first tried to bargain with me and said that he would personally make sure that it was completely fine when it was returned to me and would even compensate me otherwise, but I told him that that was not the problem here at all, and it was just for sentimental reasons that I wanted my own daughter to be able to wear my wedding jewelry first. That was it. There was nothing deeper than that. Then he started getting personal with me and said that the way I was behaving was utterly selfish, and he did not expect me to act this way with his daughter. He said that he had never played favorites between Annie and Fran, so he didn't expect me to act this way either because it was unfair to Fran. I thought that was ridiculous because by the time we got together both girls were grown-up adult women, and it was not like we were raising them anymore, so we couldn't have played favorites even if we wanted to. It was just a moot point. I told him that he was being illogical and said that I didn't want to discuss this further, but that's when he completely lost his temper and started yelling at me. He accused me of trying to sabotage Fran's wedding on purpose because apparently I had never liked her, and everybody knew about it. I genuinely had no idea what he was talking about, and the implication that I was trying to ruin Fran's wedding because I didn't like her was one that did not sit with me because it made me sound like a terrible person. So, I made it very clear to him that this had nothing to do with Fran and everything to do with me and Annie. I was only declining because I wanted Annie to wear my jewelry first. It was just that. I had no intention of ruining anybody's wedding or sabotaging anything. I also tried to tell Hank that I actually quite like Fran, but I never got the same energy from her. I reminded him that it was always me who had been trying to talk to her and get to know her better in the past, but she was the one who never reciprocated it. If somebody doesn't even talk to me, there's not much that I can do to build a relationship with them. In spite of that, I liked her and would have loved to get to know her better. I thought that her coming over that day was an opportunity for us to bond and actually build a relationship, but she was just here for the jewelry, and it made everything seem very businesslike and insincere. But Hank was not ready to listen to even a word against Fran, although technically I was not even speaking against her. I was just telling him my side. To him, for some reason, it seemed like I was trying to shift the blame to her. I didn't even understand why there had to be a bad guy in this situation since both of us had valid reasons and feelings. Fran wanted to wear the jewelry because she wanted to look her best for the wedding, and she liked the set that I had worn, and perhaps for personal reasons she did not want to buy it and wanted to borrow it from me. I was flattered that she had liked my jewelry so much, but I also had my restraints, and I could not let her borrow it. I don't see anybody who is in the wrong here, and I think it was unfair of Hank to try and portray me as the villain. Also, his other accusations of me playing favorites and trying to sabotage Fran were simply just hurtful. After we were done arguing, he told me that I could either agree to lend my jewelry to Fran, or I could live with the knowledge that I had hurt this family just because of some petty notion that I had that anybody else wearing my wedding jewelry before Annie would cheapen it somehow, and then he walked away from the conversation and we haven't spoken since then. As I said, this is the first time that this has happened. Hank and I, like any other couple, have had arguments before, but none of this magnitude. They have always been about petty small things, but this seems like a big deal, and the fact that he's not even willing to talk to me about it and discuss things with me is what hurts. He won't even look at me, and I don't even know what to say to him at this point. I have also not spoken to Fran about this, but I highly doubt that she will be able to make him see sense either since he was pissed off the day that we had our argument. I already told you guys how Hank had always been very respectful of the fact that I had been married before and I had a child as well, but after that argument, I started feeling like he was kind of holding it against me and trying to make me feel bad for putting my daughter above his daughter. I just don't understand the sudden change in his behavior because he had always known that my first family would always be more important to me. So of course, I would prioritize Annie over Fran. Besides, it wasn't like I had watched Fran grow up or whatever, so I didn't even feel that bad saying no to her. I just need Hank to understand that this is not a comment on my relationship with him, just a personal issue that I don't think is such a big deal, but I don't know how to explain it to him without arguing with him again, and I don't know if I have the energy for that. He and I have not been speaking to each other for a couple of days, and I just don't know what to say to him. I have spoken to Annie about this, and she told me that she was fine with somebody else wearing the wedding jewelry, but it wasn't about her, it was about the principle of the thing. The way Hank has been treating me since after the fight, it makes me feel like a total jerk, and I really want to make things right with him, but I also do not have any interest in lending my jewelry to Fran. I don't understand if I'm being petty or not because I'm seriously beginning to question if I was ever in the right here just because of how I'm being treated for saying no to something that I thought was completely reasonable. Aita for saying no to my stepdaughter when she asked me for my wedding jewelry because I wanted my own daughter to wear them first. Update 1. Hello, I would just like to take the time out to thank everybody first who commented on my post, good or bad. Anybody who had anything to say about my situation. Thank you for commenting, and it was all really helpful. Anyway, coming back to what happened, it's been about a week and a half since our argument, and we haven't been speaking. As I said, it had been a really difficult time for us and I was not dealing with it well. 2 days ago, I finally broke down and decided that I was going to talk to Hank because not talking to each other was not going to lead anywhere. The fight would never get resolved if we continued to give each other the cold shoulder and turn it into an ego clash. I was right and he thought that he was right, but there had to be some common ground, and we had to come to a conclusion about this because otherwise we would never be able to work things out. So, I sat him down the other day, and I decided to tell him everything that was weighing on my mind. I told him that I was afraid that I was going to lose him because of this fight, and that's the last thing I would ever want. When I said that, he seemed to melt a little, and we ended up hugging at that point because it was pretty clear that both of us had really missed each other, and we didn't want to continue fighting. After hugging, he told me that he had realized he and Fran were being really entitled by demanding that I let her have the wedding jewelry, especially because that was really special to me and it held a lot of sentimental value. He told me that he had realized it was wrong of him to put me in a difficult position and kind of make me choose between Fran and Annie. Even if it was not directly going to impact anything, it was still not cool, and he said that he was apologetic for it. I accepted his apology and said that I might have been a little annoying to deal with at that time as well because I was just sticking to one thing without even bothering to explain my reasoning behind it calmly and adequately. I told him that the wedding jewelry was special to me because I had picked it out specifically because I knew that my late husband would appreciate it. It held a lot of meaning to me, and if somebody had to wear it after me, it just had to be Annie. I told him that I could get an identical set made for Fran, and it could be my wedding gift to her, and he seemed to be okay with that. Both of us apologized to each other, and everything is better again. Update 2. So it's been 2 days since I posted here, and like I said, Hank and I had decided that I was going to have an identical set of wedding jewelry custom made for Fran, and that could be my wedding gift to her. Mind you, that would be a lot more expensive than just letting her have my jewelry. I thought she was going to appreciate it, but instead, she flipped out at us and said that we were being really crazy. She came over this evening, and my husband had been the one to invite her home so we could talk it out and clear the air between us. I explained to her that there were a lot of sentimental reasons why I couldn't let her have my original jewelry, but I would be more than happy to have a duplicate made for her specifically. In fact, I'm still in touch with my friend who designed my jewelry, and I could just get her to do another one, and I know that she would be more than happy to do it for me, so if Fran really wanted to wear the kind of jewelry that I wore for my wedding, I would be the one to arrange it for her. I thought that she would be happy when she heard that, but she started sulking and saying that it was not what she wanted. She told me that one of the rustic and kind of traditional feeling that one had when they were old jewelry. I don't know exactly what she meant by that, but I told her that it would be the same visually. She then started making faces and that she couldn't believe that I was treating her like this. Just like Hank had accused me of playing favorites during our fight, she said the same thing, and suddenly I realized that that's where Hank must have heard it from. Fran planted that ridiculous idea in his head because it was very unlikely that suddenly he just woke up one day and decided to pit our daughters against each other and make it seem like a competition. I didn't say anything about it at the time because I didn't want to accuse her of anything, but I knew for a fact that Fran was trying to manipulate the situation and make it work in her favor just so she could wear my jewelry. I thought that it was kind of crazy, but I kept my opinions to myself. I thought that she was being a little too obsessive over something like jewelry because trying to manipulate your father is just taking things too far. However, she did not keep her opinions to herself and made sure that she told me exactly what she thought of me. We made it clear that she would not be borrowing my jewelry. She got really mad at me and stood up and started screaming at me. She told me that she had always known that I didn't like her. Yet another thing that I'm sure she must have said to her father the other day, and he repeated it to me during the argument. I don't blame him, honestly. Hank is a relatively straightforward guy, so he probably didn't even realize that he was being manipulated. Anyway, at least now we know where it was all coming from. She went on to say a lot of things about me, mostly about how I was trying to sabotage her wedding and I was just jealous that she was getting married, but my daughter had no prospects yet. She claimed that apparently I'd always been insecure because she was clearly superior to Annie, and both of us could never compete, which is why we were ganging up against her and refusing to let her have just one thing that she wanted for her wedding and gatekeeping it for no reason. Then she moved on to Hank and said that she was really disappointed that he had allowed himself to be manipulated by me, but I guess Hank had had that realization that Fran had been the one to put all those ridiculous ideas in his head in the first place, which is what led to our first argument and why he didn't say much about it. He was very cold towards Fran and said that he knew who had been doing the manipulating. She went on screaming at us for a while, but we didn't respond, and after that she went away crying. I mean, if it's her loss because she could have had exactly the kind of jewelry that she wanted, but she had to turn it into something bigger than it was, and that's all on her anyway. At least Hank and I work things out and we doing fine, so that's nice. We tried to fix the situation with Fran, but it didn't play out the way we had been expecting it to, and that's fine as well. It was just not in our control, and she was expecting way too much from somebody whom she had never bothered to build a relationship with or even be nice to. Update 3. Hi everyone. So it's been about a week since our fight with Fran, and she hasn't been on speaking terms with any of us. It's really surprising that she's not even speaking to Hank anymore because they have always been close. I can tell that he's upset, but we had a discussion about the fight that we had, and he admitted that most of the things that we had said during our argument were things that Fran had put into his head, and he was just upset that she was upset, which is why things got out of control, and he was sorry about it. But he had realized that Fran had manipulated him. He was not going to talk to her until she apologized for making things so difficult unnecessarily. We don't know whether that apology is going to come or not, but until then, Fran's brother is also on our side on this, so if she wants anybody from her family at all to be attending her wedding, she'll have to apologize at some point. I know that I won't be invited, but I honestly don't care. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Parents excluded me from the perfect family Christmas photo because I'm overweight and use a wheelchair. So I told my grandma, who later changed her will, and my parents freaked out. I, 17F, have a younger brother, Nathan, 15M, and I always had this feeling that my parents preferred him over me. Nathan is adopted. My parents adopted him around 9 years ago, but he fits right in with our family. In fact, I would even say that he looks more like a part of my family and like the kind of child that my parents should have than I do. I'm not saying this because I want to, but because my parents have joked about this several times, but I feel like they really don't mean it as a joke. My family is really conventionally attractive, and I'm not even kidding. They could be on the cover of some family magazine. I unfortunately don't really fit in. I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes as a kid, and that made it very difficult for me to lose weight. My parents tried to control my portions, and whatever I consumed was strictly monitored by them, but that's no way to live, and I used to literally have to eat in secret because it genuinely felt like they were starving me. It was already very difficult for me to maintain a healthy weight, and because of my eating habits, it became impossible for me to lose weight, and I'm going to be honest, I'm quite overweight now. And then, around 6 months ago, I was unfortunately diagnosed with fibromyalgia, and for the past 3 months, I have been forced to intermittently use a wheelchair because the symptoms are so severe, and I have flare-ups quite frequently, but I don't really know what the reason for that is yet, so I can't even prevent that from happening. Life had already been pretty difficult for me earlier since I had been an introverted kid, And even at home, the way I was treated was not exactly ideal, but now after my diagnosis, things have taken a turn for the worse. Earlier, I was just overweight, but now I am that fat kid in a wheelchair. I was struggling mentally, and my parents did not do anything to help me improve my situation. Instead, they started making it even worse for me because from their behavior, it was pretty apparent that they considered me a burden on their family. So I just started restricting myself to my room as much as I could because I really did not want to bother them. And it is incredibly lonely, but I can't help it. I really don't want to feel like I'm constantly disappointing everyone around me. I always kept feeling like they didn't really want me as part of their family, but I would deal with it by shaking these thoughts off. However, after the incident that took place a couple of weeks ago, it became much more difficult to just do that. Almost 3 weeks back, my parents were discussing the Christmas postcard that we send out every year to the rest of the family, and the next day, like every year, I got dressed in a red outfit and went to the living room so I could be a part of the family photograph. It's been a ritual for years, and I thought that even though everything had changed, at least this would remain constant, and I would still continue to feel like part of my own family, but they took that away from me as well. As soon as they saw me, they got really awkward and said that they had thought that maybe this time it would only be the 3 of them because I was in a wheelchair that day, and they didn't want to spoil their photograph. I was shocked that they would even say something like that, but I tried to bargain with them. I said that I would try to stand for a couple of pictures, and it really wouldn't be that bad for me, but they insisted that I should stay in the wheelchair and just let them take the photos. That made it very obvious to me that they did not want me in the picture anyway, in the most literal sense of the phrase. So I went back to my room, and I cried myself to sleep, and the worst part was that nobody even came by to check on me. It was a horrible day towards the end of a horrible year, and I just couldn't bear it. So that day, I finally called my grandmother up, and I told her everything that was going on. My grandma is my dad's mother, and she's a wonderful person. My grandpa passed away when my dad was just 10 years old, and since then, she has built a life for herself from scratch. She's really strong and inspirational, and she loves me more than anyone else. I would have gone to live with her, but I was really holding out on the fact that at some point my parents would probably change and treat me better. But that day I realized that it was never going to happen. My grandmother knew that my parents didn't exactly treat me well, and several times she had asked me to move in with her if I wanted to. In that day, I told her that I really wanted to go away. I wanted to leave this house and live with her because clearly I was not wanted here. I had known that for a really long time, but I had still been fighting with myself, trying not to believe it because at the end of the day, they were still my parents and this was my family. But if this was my family, I was probably better off without one. She was the one who was there for me that day. She calmed me down and comforted me on the phone while I continued to sob. She also told me that she would be there in a couple of days as soon as she was back from her cruise with her friends, and then she would take me away with her. Yeah, my grandma has a pretty cool lifestyle anyway. I made her promise that she would take me away, and after that, I did not say anything to my parents because I had realized that it was not worth it. They did not even bother to apologize to me after that particular incident for excluding me from the photograph. They pretended like everything was normal, and so did I because I knew that I was going to be rescued from this place soon enough. And my grandmother, true to her word, showed up at our place last week for 7 entire days. Days I had barely spoken to my parents or Nathan. All I did was go to school, come back home, and then stay in my room for the rest of the day. But on the day that my grandmother visited, I was the one to open the door to her and invite her in. My parents did not have a clue about what was going to happen, so they seemed pretty relaxed to have her around and were acting as if everything was normal, but my grandmother was having none of it. So she asked them why exactly hadn't I been included in the Christmas postcard as soon as she was seated. The postcards hadn't even been sent out yet, so my parents were really confused as to how she found out, but then they figured out that I must have told her about that incident. And instead of acting apologetic for it, they turned to me and rolled their eyes at me, saying that I had no reason to make a big deal out of it, and complained to my grandmother about that. They offered the same explanation once again. They did not want to bother me by having me stand up for the picture, and if I had my wheelchair in the photo, it would spoil the photograph. So far, I hadn't said anything, but then I took the opportunity to point out that I had told them that I was fine with standing up for a couple of minutes, but they were the ones who had refused, and it obviously meant that they really did not want to be in the picture. I pointed out that they had always treated me like an outsider in my family because I did not fit in with them, even though that was not even my fault. I told them that it was ironic that even though Nathan was adopted, they treated him more like somebody who was actually their flesh and blood as opposed to me. They only considered me a burden, and even though Nathan and I used to be close when we were children, he had observed the way that our parents treated me and had chosen to distance himself from me as well. So in the end, I was left with absolutely no one in this household. At least then Nathan had the good sense to look away because he knew whatever I was saying was true. My parents got mad at me instantly for saying that Nathan was adopted, as if he didn't know. Obviously, he was aware of it because he was 6 years old when he came into our family, and I had never thought of him less as my brother just because he was not biologically related to me, but my point was still true that he always received the treatment that I did not because he looked like my parents' kid and I did not. And maybe I had kind of started resenting all of them a little bit because of how I was being treated. Even then, my parents did not take the opportunity to apologize or even act like they were sorry. They just said that I was acting spoiled and I was being nasty by bringing up the fact that Nathan was adopted just to justify my behavior. They even went on to say that they expected an apology from me now. I was about to argue even more, but I guess my grandma had had enough by that point. She intervened and said that there was no need for that. She was here to prevent exactly this kind of mistreatment from taking place anymore. My parents looked confused, so she told them that she was taking me off their hands since they had never bothered to hide the fact that they considered me a burden on the family. I was turning 18 in a couple of months, so there was no real need to bother with custody and whatever. I could just go live with her and it would be completely fine. My parents seemed shocked for a couple of minutes. Nobody said anything, but then they said that if my grandmother really wanted to take me with her, then she was free to do so. They were not going to stop me. They didn't even put up a fight, and it just proved all my theories to be true. They really didn't want me to be a part of the family. With me gone, it would just be my parents and Nathan, and then they could finally have the picture-perfect family that they have always wanted. When my parents said that they were fine with my grandmother taking me away, I thought that we were going to leave immediately, but my grandmother just smiled and said that they had acted exactly the way she had expected them to, and then she brought out some papers. She said that she should have done this a long time back and told my parents that she was cutting them out of her will, and now after she passed away, everything that she had would go to me and Nathan. At first, I did not realize the implications of this, but I guess my parents did because they immediately flew into defense mode and said that it was incredibly unfair for her to treat them like that just because I was Brady and entitled. I guess I hadn't really thought about it, but my grandmother is pretty wealthy since she was one of the top real estate agents before she retired a couple of years back, so it would make sense for her to have a lot of money, and I hadn't really thought about it because I love my grandmother for who she is, not because of her money, unlike my parents. Anyway, then she told my parents that she would not be leaving anything to them and even showed them the paperwork for it. They started bawling and said that she was being horrible and that she just couldn't do this to them, but my grandmother literally did not care. She just told me to go back to my room, pack everything that I needed, and then come along with her. Thankfully, I had pretty much kept everything packed since I had a week to prepare for this, and I only had to drag everything out. Even when I was doing that, my parents just kept crying, begging and bargaining with my grandmother, but she just ignored them. Nathan did not say anything. He just sat quietly in a corner, trying to disappear from the room itself. While I was leaving, he was the only person who bothered to say goodbye to me, and my parents were too busy trying to argue with my grandma to even notice that I was also leaving. Soon enough, we had driven away, and since then, I've been living with my grandma. Her place is a lot closer to my school as well, so I get to sleep a lot longer since I don't have to wake up early for the bus, and I can just walk to school. I feel like I should have switched to living with her earlier than I did, but at least it's better late than never. My parents have not bothered to contact me since I left, but Nathan sent me a text soon after. He acknowledged the fact that I had never treated him badly, but he had actually distanced himself from me, and maybe unknowingly, he had allowed the way that our parents treated me to influence his behavior towards me as well. He hadn't even realized until I had brought it up, but now that he knew about it, he wanted to make it up to me by apologizing. He said that he was really and truly very grateful for this family because had it not been for us, he probably still would have been stuck with his biological parents and had a much worse life. He was not just thankful to my parents for adopting him, but also to me for always treating him like my own brother and to my grandmother as well. Nathan told me that he wanted to have a fresh start with me, and so we have been hanging out at school so we can repair our relationship. It's been a bit weird for the past couple of years ever since he turned 13. He had been very distant from me, but now I feel like I'm slowly getting back to the old Nathan who used to put me on a pedestal. Anyway, this is not about that. It's just that he said something to me in passing yesterday while we were hanging out that really stayed with me. While talking, I just happened to ask what was going on at home because I couldn't resist wanting to know what my parents were up to. Nathan told me that the situation at home was not looking too good because apparently, the blame game between my parents had started already. My mom was blaming my dad for pushing me away my entire life and even for the incident that took place the other day because apparently, it had been his idea not to include me in the picture. My dad blamed her for making me feel like I was a burden because most of the time, it was my mother who would overreact, and it felt as though having me as a child was the toughest job in the world for her. Nathan told me that at the rate that things are going, he's afraid that they might file for a divorce, and he mentioned it to me very casually, but I haven't been able to stop thinking about it since then. And I know that it's very stupid of me to think about it and even consider this possibility, but it's just that I have started feeling like if they get divorced, it might be my fault. It might be because I overreacted because maybe they genuinely did not mean to make me feel like a burden or whatever. They probably did not even intend to offend me on the day of the photo shoot, but I took it to heart. I honestly don't know what to think, but I don't know for a fact that I will be very upset if my parents decide to get divorced. No matter what is going on with me and them right now, I feel like an idiotic doormat for even considering these things, but I can't help it. It's just what's going on in my head, and I have tried everything to push it out of my mind, but I just can't do it. So that's why I'm here since I feel like I need reassurance right now, and there is no better place to seek that unbiased and objective opinion than Reddit. So, IA for getting offended that my parents didn't want me in the family photo for our Christmas postcard and telling my grandmother about it? Edit. Okay, so just to clear up a couple of things, my grandmother changed her will and left everything to me and Nathan because our parents had screwed up, but Nathan had not. I will admit that the way he had been behaving with me had not exactly been nice, but again, he's just a kid, and so am I. He's not even close to 18, and I think he deserves a chance to redeem himself. Both my grandmother and I believe that he does not deserve to be punished and pushed away by his family because of what our parents did. If we act the same way, there's literally no difference between us and my parents, so I think it was pretty fair for my grandmother to include Nathan in the will as well. And as for people who were asking about his birth parents, his mom was around 19 when she had him and had to drop out of college for that, and the cherry on top, she was struggling with substance abuse too. Nathan's father unfortunately took off a couple of months after he was born and came back in his life intermittently. My parents knew Nathan's biological mother's cousin since they went to college together, which is how my parents were able to find out about Nathan. Nathan's maternal grandparents had tried to give their daughter several chances to clean up her act and be a good mother to him, but she just couldn't do it. So when Nathan turned 6, his grandparents decided to talk their daughter into giving him up for adoption because not only was she ruining her life, but she was also spoiling his future, and my parents coincidentally had been thinking about adopting a second child because they wanted another kid, but my mother's first pregnancy had been pretty complicated, and she did not want to take the risk a second time. So Nathan's aunt spoke to my parents, and they fostered Nathan for a while before officially adopting him. His grandparents have stayed in touch with him. He meets them every month, but he has never met his parents after he got adopted. His mother claims that it's too hard for her to see him again, and his dad has just disappeared from his life entirely. Ever since then, he has been my brother. There has been no debate about it. I might have brought up the fact that he was adopted, and I kind of feel guilty about it. I shouldn't have done that, but I was just very frustrated, and in the heat of the moment I kind of lost the plot, but I have apologized to him for it since then, and we are trying to get back on good terms because I really don't want to lose him. We lost each other for a couple of years because of our parents, but we are not going to happen again. In fact, I have even told him that if things get too hard for him back at home because of how much our parents are fighting, he is welcome to come live with me and our grandmother. Update 1. Hello? Thank you so much for all the comments. Thank you so much for all the support that you guys have shown me. It's been overwhelming for me to deal with it, but it makes me feel better to know that there have been a lot of people who have been in a similar kind of position because I was feeling really alone before this. However, knowing that you guys have made it through gives me hope. I took the suggestion that most of you guys had. I spoke to my grandmother about what I was feeling, like I was responsible for my parents fighting, and she, like everyone else, told me that I had nothing to feel sorry about. I had finally taken a stand for myself after years of tolerating the way they had mistreated me. There was nothing wrong with that. I had done literally everything in my power to make them realize what I was worth. I had put up with them for so many years and tried to assimilate myself into their family, but they kept rejecting me and pushing me away again and again, and now that they did not have anybody to blame, they had turned on each other instead. That's really not my fault, and I don't need to beat myself up about it, and that's true. True, I guess right now my parents don't have anybody to blame in the household, and they don't want to take it out on Nathan, so they are taking out all their anger and frustration on each other. If they get divorced, it'll be very sad, but it's not going to be my problem, and if they decide to stay together, that's still better for them. Whatever happens, I'm going to stay out of it. I have spoken to Nathan about this as well, and he told me that he had just told me what was going on at home because I had asked, but he did not intend to make me feel guilty about it, and I know that. So I told him that it was not his fault anyway, but I just wanted him to know that if he wants, then he can come live with me because I know that he might end up blaming himself as well, and I don't want that for him. He told me he would think about it, but right now he would prefer to stay with our parents because he still owes them this much, and I kind of understand where he's coming from, so I have no grudges against him. We have promised each other that no matter what happens with the rest of the family, we are not going to allow that to turn us against each other, and I'm really hoping that we are able to stick to that. Update 2. Hi, so my parents came to visit me today. When I came back home from school, they were here, sitting in the living room with my grandmother. As soon as I walked in, she told me that they were there to talk to me, but I was in no mood to talk to them since I had had a pretty crappy day at school as well. So I told them that whatever it was that they had to say, they could put it in an email or they could come by later because I was really exhausted and I just needed to take a nap. But they told me that they had specifically taken time off from work to talk to me because they wanted to take me back with them. I would be leaving for college in a couple of months, so they wanted to spend the last couple of months before I left with me. They said that they were there to apologize if I had felt offended by their behavior. Now, people can say that I have been nitpicking, but I really don't like the way that they phrased it because what does it even mean to say that they were sorry that I felt offended by their behavior? Their behavior was offensive, that's why I felt offended. I knew that I had been doubting myself for a couple of days, but circumstances have changed now. I know that everyone agrees that what they did and the way that they treated me was unacceptable, so I told them that the only reason I had been so upset was because the way they treated me was not right. I was offended because what they had done was offensive. There was no question of a situation arising, but instead of taking that in their stride and correcting themselves, they told me that even I had been very distant from them, so of course, they had no idea what I was going through. It just made me realize that no matter how hard I tried or how hard anyone tried, my parents were beyond apologies. I told them to leave because I knew that they were just going to try and gaslight me further into believing that this was all my fault and eventually get me to apologize to them instead. I wanted to save myself the trouble, so I just told them to leave, but they refused to even get up and said that they were not going anywhere until I had sat down and dignified everything with a discussion because they deserved that at the very least, especially after everything that they had done for me, which just meant normal things that every parent does. I didn't even want to argue. I just rolled my eyes and started to go back to my room, and then my dad yelled at me and said that I was not allowed to leave without talking to them. Thankfully, my grandmother was right there, and she was not going to let this kind of behavior fly in her house, so she told my dad to keep his mouth shut and his voice low because after the way he treated me, he had no right to scream at me just because I had made the right choice for myself and left them. She instructed my father to apologize to me and said that if I did not want to speak to him, there was nothing that she could do, and that they had to leave because she was not going to allow them to mentally harass me again and again just because they were worried about their reputation and their image. They were obviously only here to get me back with them as they were worried about what people would think if they discovered that I had moved out and was living with my grandma. But I didn't care. I had my own future to look out for. My parents tried to speak to me again, but I just told them to leave me alone because everything was still too fresh, and I was not going to move on anytime soon. So eventually, they had to leave because my grandma was not going to allow them to stay much longer. After they left, she asked me if I wanted to see them again, and I told her that for a while my answer would be no, so the next time that they try to visit, my grandma is not going to invite them in. I spoke to Nathan about their visit as well, and he told me that he had no idea, and they just come back home a couple of hours ago. They looked very disappointed, and nobody had even come out of their rooms in a while. I guess it's pretty depressing for him, but I can't help it. It is what it is. Update 3. Hello folks, so I'm leaving for college in a week. I got into my first choice, and I'm really looking forward to my future now. It's going to be very difficult being on my own, but my grandmother has made all the arrangements prior to the move, and she's going to stay with me and help me settle into my apartment for the first couple of weeks. My parents and I have not spoken for the last couple of months, and my mental health has improved considerably. I'm no longer breaking down randomly during the day, so I guess staying away from them has had its benefits. Nathan has told me that things have pretty much gone back to normal in the household, and I guess they are also not any worse off without me, which makes me feel a little bad. But I'm happy for Nathan. We obviously kept in touch, and we are going to try and get on FaceTime at least once every week. I'm going to miss my life here, but I'm excited for the future. Thanks for checking in on me. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.